Okay, so now we're actually recording to the hard drive now for the YouTube VOD. So okay, everything should be set up now. And we're gonna launch into some Chrono Trigger. Is this the button? Ah, that was the button. Cool, cool. Awesome. Love it. Absolute. Oh, audio's a bit loud. Audio's really loud. Okay, that's more like it. I dislike how it pauses every single time I click outside the window. I wonder if that's a setting I could switch, but screw it. We aren't going to be doing anything outside the window for a while, so let's just launch into it. I actually want to talk a little bit about this game before. Yeah, I want to be able to go over and check my layout periodically without pausing the stupid game. Let's just actually do that real quickly. That'll be part of our setup. In fact, I don't have the text up that says we're setting up, but we are still setting up. Toggle exclusive command. Is there like a setting somewhere? You know what? We'll just roll with it. I'll deal with this some other time. So okay. Chrono Trigger. And yeah, I want to talk about this a little bit before we actually get into the game proper, because it's a pretty special game to me, I would say. It's not... This is probably the first game that got me, like, really into RPGs in, like, a really big way back in the day. Like, it wasn't technically my first RPG. That would have been Super Mario RPG. And actually, even that wouldn't have technically been my first RPG, because I would have rented Final Fantasy, and I think there was another slightly less well-known title as well. It was called Little... Damn it, every single... Okay. It was called Little Ninja Bros. So yeah, those were basically the two first RPGs I ever played. But I was like a little kid back when I played those, and I had like no idea what I was doing. Could not figure it out whatsoever. And it was just like all these like numbers, and I could like barely do math at the time. I would have been like 3 or 4 years old. So it was like, or probably not that young, maybe more like 4 or 5. But yeah, so it wasn't until like years later, and the RPG genre, I was kind of turned off to it as a result of those early experiences. It just seemed to me like this really complicated math-based genre. You got like these screens full of numbers, and it just looked like something that was like above me at that point. But I eventually heard about Super Mario RPG back in the day, and that actually looked super accessible because it had like but it was sort of directly, like you directly input your commands on the controller, so you just like hit A to attack instead of selecting from a menu, and it just seemed a bit like lighter and breezier and more accessible. So I bit the bullet and I played Super Mario RPG, and I absolutely fell in love with it. That was like the coolest thing I had ever seen. And so I was like, but I wasn't really into RPGs just yet. For me, it was like, oh, this is like this weird Mario game, and I didn't make the connection that like RPGs are all like this, and you should play more RPGs to get more of this type of experience. It actually wasn't until it was an EGM magazine. I feel like it was like the Holiday Buyer's Guide for like, I guess would have been 1995, maybe 96, and it had like a printed walkthrough of the first bits of Chrono Trigger. It took you from the start of the game to, I think, up to when you first get to the end of time, and it was a mostly text-based walkthrough. There were like a few screenshots sprinkled throughout, but other than that, it was like just like a big long description of all of the things you do in the game. And it just seemed entirely crazy to me, because it's like, yeah, just like because for me at that point in my gaming history, a video game, well, it was like Mario Brothers, like Sonic the Hedgehog. That's like you bounce on an enemy to get coins and rings and whatnot, and that was a video game, as far as I was concerned. And then I see this Chrono Trigger walkthrough where it's like, yeah, you go to the fair and there's a soda guzzling contest and you beat up a robot for silver points that you can trade in for a sword, and then you meet this girl and her pendant takes her back in time, so you go into the telepod, then you go into the Middle Ages, and then you need to rescue the queen, and then you come back and there's a trial, and different stuff happens. Hey, there's the trial. Yeah, and different stuff happens there depending on your behavior at the fair, and then you escape the dungeon, and it's just like insane. It was like a whole new paradigm of what video games could be, as opposed to like the, you know, dinky little 2D platformers and that type of. Or I guess I played a bit of Zelda, but that wasn't quite as like story heavy. It was a bit more rooted in like gameplay and action and that type of thing. There was a bit of reading in those games, but it was mostly like, you know, action. But like something as intricate as this walkthrough I was reading was like just completely different from just it blew my mind. It was like, how can all this be possible in a video game? Well, and to be clear, I had not yet played Mario RPG at this point. I just saw Chrono Trigger. It seemed really cool, but then there was a screenshot of the menus. In fact, let's get into the game so we can actually show off some of these menus. And there was like 20 different numbers in the menu, and they showed off like the options screen, and there's like a ton of different numbers in there too. And it's like, oh my god, whatever this. Clearly, the way that all of this is possible in a video game is just with like. Just to make like an insanely complicated video game that's like way beyond anything that I'll be able to comprehend or enjoy. So I was like, it was enticing to me at that time, but it was like, okay, that's like, I don't know, a game for like old people or something like that. And I sort of gave it a pass at that point. And then I think some number of that same year, I think I played Mario RPG, and it's like, okay, it sort of broke me into the genre. So it's like, okay, this is what an RPG is about. This is how all this stuff goes down. And it like I said, it was great, brilliant. Totally, it got me ready for Chrono Trigger. And then I think I rented Chrono Trigger like the next month after I was done Mario RPG. I was like, okay, let's try out some Chrono Trigger now that I've got some more experience of what this is all about. And yeah, the rest is history. I'm sure everyone probably knows Chrono Trigger by this point. Anyone who cares enough to tune into a Chrono Trigger Twitch stream or watch a YouTube video about Chrono Trigger. So yeah, for years after, and then I played like a bunch of SNES RPGs after that. I played Lufia. I don't think I played Final Fantasy VI, but Final Fantasy III, as it would have been known at the time, but I didn't play 2 until years later, and I didn't really like it. But yeah, I played Lufia, I played Earthbound, I played like all the RPGs that were available at that time, and I played pretty much nothing but RPGs until about the PS2 era, where I sort of really fell away from the genre. I just sort of realized that this is... I don't know, I just sort of got a different perspective on gaming, and I just sort of realized that, like, oh, this is mostly crap. Like there's nothing to these. The combat is usually brain dead, and it's just a matter of, and to the extent that it is challenging, it's just a matter of grinding. And so, yeah, I really fell away from JRPGs for a long time afterwards, and just sort of fairly recently sort of got back into trying out some of these old ones. And Chrono Trigger, and sort of my denigration of JRPGs has sort of continued for most of those. I still a lot of the games that were sort of childhood classics I really dislike. Like, I can't really play Lufia anymore. I can kind of play Super Mario RPG, although I don't really finish it. I don't have the patience. But Chrono Trigger is one of the very, very few games that I still like pretty much as much as I did back in the day. I was thinking of maybe doing stupid names for this playthrough. I almost always go for the default names in any game where you can rename your characters. But what the hell? It's a comeback stream, and I want to talk a little bit about different things. So we're gonna go with a theme for this playthrough. And anyways, yeah, that's my history with Chrono Trigger. Yeah, I remember I was making uh, a list of like my top 10 JRPGs, thinking I might do a YouTube video on it at some point, and it was really, really difficult to come up with 10 RPGs, or 10 JRPGs specifically, and it was really difficult to come up with 10 that I even like. Like, I think number 8 was Saga Frontier, which it turns out it makes a really good portable game. I played that on PSP in college, and it worked really well that way. But like, I'm not exactly in love with Saga Frontier or anything, and that was like my number 8 or 9 best RPG of all time. Okay, so anyways, let's actually focus on the game. So anyways, yeah, that's my history with the genre. It has been a long time since I've played Chrono Trigger, though. Last time I would have played it would have actually been when it was released on the DS with a bunch of new content. This is the Super Nintendo version we're emulating here just because this is the one that's easy to play on PC and record and stream on Twitch, so that's what we're going with. The way she opens the curtains, like there, and he like shaking his head into the pillow. My mom used to do that to me when I was a kid, even around that time when I was that age, when I was like playing Chrono Trigger and all these other RPGs. And it just kind of, and I actually noticed this just for the first time when I was doing my test recording, that the cat is kind of like sitting there sleeping, and he like gets up too once she opens the curtains there, and it's just like a really nice touch that I never noticed before. But yeah, it always really frickin' pissed me off when my mom would do that in the morning. Screw you. Close the blinds. Give me the darkness. I want to go back to bed. Okay, looks like looks like Goku's having none of that. So, okay. We're gonna start up the game proper. And, yeah, continuing this little theme here. I suppose if we're going with this sort of Akira Toriyama-inspired naming scheme, you could reasonably name pretty much every female character Bulma. She like covers the entire range of female visual archetypes for Akira Toriyama's art style. But actually, I think I'm gonna save Bulma for Marl's name. So who are other? Well, we'll go with Pan. She doesn't really look like Pan, but she's another Dragon Ball character I can name off the top of my head. So, yeah, we'll go with Pan. It's funny, too, looking back on it, that was a really quiet meow there. But, one thing that's kind of amused me going back into these old JRPGs is the way that my perspective on the value of money changes a bit, because I sort of realized going back to these games that it's like sort of more based on the Japanese yen. So like if you've got like 200G allowance, it's like holy shit, she give me $200, but all I can buy with it is like a pair of gloves or something. But it's probably more intended to be in line with the value of like a Japanese yen or something, so it's really like a $2 allowance, which is about what I would have gotten back in the day also, so. But yeah, the setting of this game, or I should say this first setting of the game, because of course this game is set across multiple locations in time here. And yeah, this is going to be a pretty thorough playthrough, just because, like I said, it's been years since the last time I played this, so I kind of want to do a thorough job of it and see if there's anything interesting that I've forgotten or missed on previous playthroughs. I don't think we need to be so thorough as to do lodging when we don't need to, though. But oh, and I guess one other thing to consider, which I didn't think of with regards to the different versions of this game you can play now, is we've got the original Woolsey translation here as well, which I am rather partial to. Because yeah, I remember Final Fantasy VI and Chrono Trigger, or 6 on the GBA and Chrono Trigger on the DS, both got new translations when they were ported. And yeah, both of those games on the Super Nintendo were translated. And there's a dude named Ted Woolsey who did all of the translations for Squaresoft RPGs back in those days, and I feel like people have mixed opinions on sort of the quality of the classic Woolsey translations. I think for the time he did an excellent job, and that yeah, basically, or not only is his work like good enough, but I think it's actually generally, it's got a lot more flavor than a lot of the retranslations you see, and I really do appreciate that. There's sort of those two competing schools of thought when it comes to translating Japanese video games. On the one hand, there's the sort of literalists who want everything to be, who want the so-called literal translation, where everything is exactly the same as it was in Japanese, except not in Japanese. And then there's the sort of more the approach where it's like, we're going to localize this game and make it more palatable to a North American audience. And a lot of that involves sort of spicing up the text a little bit and making things a little bit more entertaining and flavorful for the readers or viewers, as it were. You see a lot of those types of... I can see... I'm going to have to go off to the side here. In fact, I don't need to be on Steam. We're not playing Sonic CD anymore. I can just close out of Steam. It was starting up a download for me, which I was afraid was going to interfere with the stream. Can I actually save at this save point? It didn't ding when I entered it. Looks like that's a no. Or does he actually explain it to us? It's a replica. Okay. They can't give us a real save point this early on. That would be, I don't know, unfair or too good or something. Although I think we can save in the overworld anyways, so... I'm actually going to review all this. Let's see how good tutorials were back in the day. There's kind of a different paradigm in... not really... It wasn't a given that you'd have in-game tutorials in video games back then. Or I guess you had the beginner house in FF6, so I guess Squaresoft kind of did it that way. But in most games back in the day, the standard was you read the flippin' manual, and that's how you figured out what the game is about. Like that, sometimes there'd be a tutorial, but it usually wouldn't tell you everything that you need to know about the game. Like I remember I played Civ 2 on PC back in the day. Not at the same time I was playing Chrono Trigger, but a few years afterwards. And like the manual was like this thick. I've really got to get... I'm having trouble adjusting to the idea that when I say like this thick, you can actually see like the space between my index finger and thumb. Like I can adjust it like this. Like normally I'm used to just like gesticulating at the camera, and that's just what I do, and I'm not really self-conscious about it at all. But it's really just a trip every time I like make a hand gesture to demonstrate something, and realizing that it can actually be seen now. Anyways, that was a dumb tangent. But anyways, yeah, Civ 2 had a in-game tutorial and a manual as well, and the in-game tutorial didn't even cover like a fraction of what you needed to know to actually play the game. Like they didn't even explain like how workers work, how the different resources work. It was just like not an adequate... It basically told you how to click buttons in the menus and told you what like maybe 2 or 3 of those 30 different buttons did. And it was just like completely inadequate to actually play the game. And then you go into the manual and it's like, you know, this thick, and explains literally everything you could possibly want to know about the game. Oh, I'm sure I'll take your advice. So yeah, I'm a bit curious then. I think I dropped something. Gross. Okay. Never mind. It's all good. Even though I'm not expecting any viewers, I have to be sure to get in the habit of glancing at chat every once in a while. But yeah, I'm just curious about old tutorials, just to see how good they are. Right, I knew there was something like that too, because I remember on my test playthrough, I remembered getting a bunch of money in the tutorial house. But yeah, just seeing the way that old games would sort of teach you how to play them is just kind of interesting to me. like a lot of the stuff that you see in this tutorial, or a lot of the stuff about like area effect attacks and line-based attacks is actually really useful here, because position-based combat was like not really a thing back in these days. Most JRPGs up to this point, you know, you got the enemies line up on one side and you line up on the other, and then you step forward and hit them. And sometimes there's a front row and a back row. I think that's an innovation that was like introduced by like Final Fantasy 2 or 4. But yeah, this was, as far as I know, this was like one of the first JRPGs to like really take into, to like have enemies that move around during combat and their position actually matters. And you see that sort of carried forward into, frankly, a lot of my other favorite JRPGs of all time as well. Like that same sort of movement and position-based combat system was part of the Lunar series as well, which is another one that made my list of top 10 JRPGs. And of course Grandia, which is my #1, which like really just like took it to the next level and actually made like a phenomenal battle system out of that concept that was sort of introduced, or sort of introduced in a sort of nascent form here in Chrono Trigger. Oh yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about the setting here. Because yeah, there's sort of a set of tropes, yeah, sort of, I would say tropes that you see in these types of JRPGs, where there's like a certain way that these types of games tend to start out. Like usually they get like right into the swing of things, where there'll be like, you know, your slowly scrolling prologue text that tells you that there's a war in the kingdom or some advancing ancient evil, and a hero will arise, and all of that nonsense. Like FF6 kind of had that, where it's sort of an explanation to set the scenario, and the scenario is usually war has befallen the kingdom or whatever. Whereas in this game, they kind of get you right into things, but not right into the gameplay, but not right into the plot. There's actually like a lot of, as I'm demonstrating here, a lot of just like dumb wandering you can do. Like the Final Fantasy games tended to get you like right into the plot and right into the gameplay. Where you have like a brief little bit of prologue text, and then you're to explain what's going on, and then you're like right into it. Usually with some completely linear, like a story dungeon. It's like, you know, you got Terra with the Magitech armor scene, and then you got in FF6 and FF4. I can't remember how FF4 started, because I only played that game once and never again, because I didn't like FF4 very much at all. But I think it started with something similar, where it just drops you right into a tutorial dungeon. Or not a tutorial dungeon, but, you know, your first dungeon right off the bat, and there's nothing to do until you clear that dungeon. Whereas here, you get some room to go exploring, but the game proper hasn't really started yet. So you can go around talking to people and checking out the setting and sort of exploring the world that they've set before you. But nothing really happens. It's like it's like the setting that they're setting up for you here is a very sort of idyllic and like very peaceful kind of world that we've got here. Which I think is a little bit, and not to get like too, I don't know, pretentious here, but it's kind of reflective of the time, I think, because this game was released in what, like the mid-90s? This was like not terribly long after like the Cold War had ended, and this was the point where you saw like the phrase "the end of history" popped up. I think there was a book entitled "The End of History." The basic thesis was like, this is the end of like history as we know it. The whole idea of like conflicts between nations, ideologies, all of that is done. Everybody is basically a liberal democracy at this point, or advancing into a liberal democracy, and then history at this point is just like a matter of the third world sort of catching up to where we're at, and then that's it. It's all uphill from here. I guess downhill from here. Whatever. It's an easy ride from here out. There's no. It's a peaceful. We're in a peaceful world now. There's no more conflict, and you see that sort of idea reflected here. I think in the year 1000 of Chrono Trigger. And of course, all that kind of, sort of blew up with the World Trade Center and all that in the years afterwards. We don't need to get into that. But the point I'm kind of making... yeah, let's put out a sad one for a 9/11 reference. But the point I'm making is that this is sort of reflective of the time, I would say. This setting here. Very peaceful, everybody's happy, there's no big conflicts or wars on the horizon or anything like that. And as far as we know, there isn't anything like that up until the apocalypse, when Lavos spurts up from the earth and rains lasers on everyone. Okay, we got the Chicken Man here. And I remember walkthroughs or it might have even been the EGM walkthrough that I mentioned earlier, who talked, and certainly the GameFAQs walkthroughs at the time. Have I done one of these yet? I love all the music in this game. This is like the second amazing, spectacular video game soundtrack we've had tonight. This is, like I said, Sonic CD is probably my favorite video game soundtrack, but this is probably in the top 10 as well. Chrono Trigger right here. And yeah, I just love that little fanfare too when you try to open the locked box. That's pretty harsh. Oh my god. That actually reminds me, this is a tangent, but when I was in high school, I participated in a Japanese exchange program in my senior year. It wasn't like a full exchange thing. Basically, they came over here for 1 week, and I went over there for 1 week. And one of the students we had here, we asked him one time if he wanted to call his parents to talk to them once he was sort of settled in for his first day. And he said, no, I don't have to. And then my mom asked, it was kind of a weird thing to say, I thought, but my mom asked him, oh, do you not get along with your parents? Because she just thought, because you know how moms are, she just thought it was like the worst thing that he wouldn't, talk to his parents, phone his parents to let him know that he got there all right. And he said, he gave like a weirdly frank answer. He says, no, I'm good with my mother, but not my father, which I thought was just like I held back my laughter, but I thought that was a hilariously frank thing to say to a complete stranger in a foreign country, and I don't know, that's what that line reminded me of just now. That's what happens when I play games like this, is just the nostalgia comes flooding back, and all of the stuff that was going on at the time. In fact, the DS version of Chrono Trigger, I think it would have been a few years after that. I think I would have been in college when the DS version of Chrono Trigger came out. Anyways, the Chicken Man. I'm pretty sure that like most GameFAQs walkthroughs would tell you how you can get there's a cheat where you can get infinite money by repeatedly talking to the Chicken Man. And I actually did this back in the day. I talked to the Chicken Man, I guess it would have been like 40 times to save up enough money for the Load Sword. And yeah, that's the kind of thing that I actually did when I played RPGs back in the day. I was the kind of person who would because I was really dumb as a kid. Like, I didn't get RPGs back in the NES days when I was like 4 or 5, and I really didn't get them too much. Like, put it to you this way, like, if you know the game, the Hecarim fight, where he goes into his little counter pose and he's like, go ahead, try and attack. I was the kind of dumbass who would attack him repeatedly when he does that and never ever figure out that his water-based counter-attack was a counter-attack. For me, that was like a stopping point in the game for me, almost, where it's like, holy shit, this Hecarim guy is just crazy, I gotta get some levels. And I just did not realize that, like, his huge water attack was based on me attacking him when he tells me to attack him and goes into his little counter-attack pose. That's how stupid I was. Not even as a kid at that point. I would have been like 11 or 12, I think, when I first... Maybe even 10. Or let's just do the math. So, 6... Actually, I would have been even younger now that I think about it. Because, yeah, Chrono Trigger, the magazine would have been like 95, 96. So, yeah, I would have been... yeah, probably 10 or 11 when I first played this game. I don't know. I'm not an expert in like childhood psychological development or anything like that, but I feel like I know there's a thing in here. I think it's like a power tab or something. But yeah, I feel like between the ages of like 10 and 11 is the point where you should realize that Hecarim taunting you to attack him means don't attack him. Or maybe, you know what, I think it was in the Middle Ages where you get the power tab or whatever. But anyways, and so, yeah, with regards to the Chicken Man, it is so much easier and faster to just get money by fighting enemies in this game. Like, seriously, these guys do hardly any damage. You can, and if you do take too much damage, you can just go and refill your health at the other, by going and meeting up with the other Chicken Man and stealing his lunch at the Millennial Fair. And yeah, you get 48 Gs out of that. And you can do this, like, way faster than you can farm, than you can farm chicken clucking. And actually, even then, I think it might... I never actually timed this out, but you can make money also by just fighting Gato at the fair a bunch of times, which I guess we might as well go to at this point. Because yeah, as much you know, fun and fucking around we can do on the overworld and the neighboring town. Actually, you know what's one thing I wanted to do, just because I can, and there's absolutely no reason to ever do this, but there's the ship here. So you can go into the ticket office, and sure, we'll spend a chicken clucking's worth of G. And, yeah, we're gonna ride the ship to the, South Town, whatever it was called. And, like, between going into the dock and talking to the dude, spending the money, and going through the whole ship ride, probably takes more time than just walking across the bridge. But, they put this in the game for some reason, and I think that's just great. And it is just great. There used to be a lot more of this type of freedom, and just, like, pointless extravagance. I guess you might call it world building, even though it doesn't make sense in this type of world for that ship to exist when it's faster to just walk. But, I like that the game gives you the opportunity, and just gives you dumb things to do, and waste your time with. You can sort of progress forward at your own pace, and there's like yeah, sort of sights to see, and you can sort of talk to people and get information, and sort of set the scene, introduce the setting, and all of that. And I feel like JRPGs used to be really good about that, in like around the SNES era and the PS1 era, and then probably in the PS2 era when things got all cinematic, and after the wake of Final Fantasy X, things all of a sudden got super linear and cinematic, and you've got like these big long cutscenes and much less epic stories, and it's just like I said, to an extent, I just sort of lost my taste for the genre at that point, where I sort of realized that, like, yeah, these games are kind of dull, and there's not much substance to them, and most of them even have really dumb and boring stories too. But even beyond that, I really do think that JRPGs took a turn for the worse, starting in around the PS2 era. So what do we actually buy with our 1,000? Or let's go to the Sword Man first, because yeah, first thing we want. I feel like we're gonna get to replace the Iron Blade like super fast. We're just not gonna spend our money on anything. This game's pretty easy, as long as you know well enough to not hit the dude when he's in his counterattack phase. As long as you're not a retarded 9-year-old, this game's not very difficult. Yeah, speaking of retarded 9-year-olds, it's super clear now, but yeah, like back in the day, these games were displayed on, like, you know, the old CRT, your flat screen, or more like curved screen television, with there's kind of a blur, that little haze over the display there. So it's like the sprites back in the day weren't as clear as they are now. So like I look at my man Melkar here. Melkar? I've heard it pronounced Melkar in the context of, like, you know, the story of the biblical story of the three wise men and whatnot, so I'll just go with Melkar. Back in the day, so it's kind of... But the idea of parsing sprites as different things is just kind of a funny thing to me. It's usually, I find, super clear what sprites are supposed to look like. You can see this guy, he's got his beady eyes, which if you look at the artwork, it's sunglasses, and he's got a mustache, and he's got like his human face. This is like a human dude. But back in the day, I don't know, it's just the white of the mustache and like the hollow, like beady eyes. It looked... In my mind, this was like a skull face man back in the day, looking at this guy on an old, like, CRT television. And just, yeah, for years. And, you know, you see him later on in the game, and he's in the village of monsters. So it's like, oh, that makes sense. We got the weird, creepy skull face man over in the monster village. And that makes sense. And it wasn't until years and years later that I saw the concept art for a lot of the different characters in the game, and it's like, oh, he's actually a mustache man with round sunglasses. And it's just like, and it's complete, and I find it difficult to see the skull face man anymore, just because now that I know what it's supposed to look like, I just see it that way, and I can't bend my brain to make it look like it did before to me. And I found that with other sprites in other games too. I think I pointed that out a couple times. I can't think of any examples off the top of my head. But, yeah, that's just really funny to me. This is the kind of playthrough. This is going to be the sort of nostalgic playthrough where I just, like, talk about every stupid thing that comes to mind. We're going to go... I'm not going to be so full of myself as to call this an in-depth playthrough, but this is going to be a very thorough and rambly playthrough. So, yeah, that's how we're going to be doing things, if that wasn't clear already. I kind of want to go beat up Gato, but we might need to get Marley. I'm just going to go back and forth on the pronunciation throughout the game. Nobody knows how to pronounce this girl's name. It's Marley, whatever. I always used to just because I was like, you know, a smart-ass kid back in the day, when I did like repeated playthroughs of this game. That's going to become a problem if it keeps doing that. Oh, you mean this pendant? That looks pretty valuable. I wonder if we can pawn that off. Yep, we're going this way with the whole fair events. Ah, dang it. Oh, he won't even let me buy from him. Okay. But, what was I talking about? I lost my train of thought. No, I think we're gonna keep it. Oh, she doesn't even have a reaction there. Kind of spoils the effects in these types of games when you know, because I never, as a kid, I would, and even beyond being a kid, I would, no, it's just, I'd say saying yes right away is probably the most criminal-like thing we could do there. Because, yeah, we're going full criminal, I think, on this playthrough, just for fun. But anyways, back as a kid, and even afterwards, I would, like, not have had the courage to go through with, like, a mean or bad response to anything, just because, you know, something wrong might happen. Or actually, there was a really funny moment on, back when I was streaming last year. I did an Azure Dreams run, and I gave, I decided not to help a girl in need. Or, it's the selfie event in the tower. And or Bulba. I'm almost tempted to go with that, but no, Bulba would just no. Or I guess we could switch it. We could switch it at this point and go with like a Pokemon themed naming thing. But yeah, that'll work. Again, I've lost track of what I was talking about. Alright, so yeah, the reason I wanted her was so I can start beating up Gato's metal joints. Because yeah, I think this might be the fastest way to earn money. To be clear, I'm not going to farm up the load sword. I do not need to. And I'm just sort of doing this just to demonstrate and show off kind of how I would have played through the game as a kid. You know what, the audio still seems a little bit loud to me, so I'm going to turn it down just a hair. Just a hair. I barely noticed the difference there, but that's probably better. Or actually, he's going to counterattack if he's far away, or if he's too close like that, so... Oh, he's going to counterattack her if he's too far away. Okay, so it doesn't matter what we do. I feel like if he's just going to keep counterattacking like this, there's not really any benefit to having her here. He's like holding her hostage there. It's like, okay, if that's how you want to be, if that's how it's going to be, I'm going to take it out on her. But no, we're criminal Chrono, so yeah, that's not going to stop us at all. actually kind of farming up them technical points as well by doing all this. But yeah, first playthrough I would have done the chicken clucking to farm up the lode sword. And then on subsequent playthroughs I would have done either farming up Gato for the GP, and then you take the GP. Okay, we're gonna eat the chicken man's lunch. Oh, and she's just laughing it up. She's like, yeah, totally down with... She's totally into, you know, bad boy Chrono here, living the life of crime. Because, yeah, every 2 runs of Gato gets you 150 GP. Or, okay, this will be the test. Yeah, we're not doing anything about the cat. This will be the test, because back in the... Or this will be a test. Back in the day, I was not fast enough on the controller to do this. But eventually, I ended up getting a turbo controller, and then I was able to do soda guzzling by cheating, basically. But I've gotten much better at like video action games in particular, and video games in general since then. So I can normally actually do this, and I know a lot of people can't. So I'm just going to show that off right here. And go! That was probably too loud. Are we gonna make it? Made it. That's... I don't... Maybe that's faster? Because, yeah, it's 15 points to beat Gato. I could probably do that 3 times, way faster than I could beat up Gato once. So maybe that's the fastest way to make money. Although... And actually, now that I think of it, that gets me to another 10. So we'll trade those in for some more Gips as well. Or, oh, it's just G. That's right. I feel like... Did they change... I can't remember what Final Fantasy game introduced Gil as sort of the standard universal Squaresoft currency. I think it might have been FF6. I feel like there was Gil in FF6. FF6 is another one of my one of my favorite RPGs. It actually didn't... maybe I should do that. Maybe I should just break out that list at some point in the stream when I've got nothing else to talk about. Or can't we... Oh, there we go. That's right. You spank that ass, Marley. It's just so endearing. I love this. Apparently, the ladder dance, you can climb... I should be more self-conscious about this about doing stupid hand-wavy gestures. Or actually, I think you can do that in, different directions. Oh, it cues them up, too. So, like, if I did... That's really weird. Oh, yeah, and the Laffy dance. So many sick dance moves in the year 1000. It looks like it cues them up, too, so if I did something like this, I just, like, mashed buttons on my controller. Yep, it's gonna play through all of them. That's pretty silly. Okay, looks like it doesn't do it that bad, because if it had actually gone through all of the buttons that I pushed, we could be here for quite some time. What else is there to do at the fair? We can bet on the race. That can be fun. Oh yeah, and so yeah, I guess this kid here kind of introduces like the notion of conflict, but that's all in the past. And again, that's kind of in keeping with the notion of like the end of history and sort of the peaceful modern world we have, where civilization just lives happily ever after. Steel Runner might try something. G.I. Jogger, okay. Supposedly this guy's predictions are whoever he predicts supposedly has a better chance of winning the race according to game FAQs. I don't know if that's actually true. But actually, another thing I read on game FAQs is that you can run in front of the racers to slow them down. I don't think it actually works. Like, I've tried this a bunch, although apparently it worked here. G.I. Jogger is... Oh, come on. Get the fuck back there, Cadillac. You know your place, Cadillac. I think he made it. I think we won. G.I. Jogger? Hey! 20 silver points. Huh. So it did work that time, so now we're keeping up the tradition where I say something, and then the game contradicts me on camera. Because, yeah, we had a few prophecies in the Sonic stream where I said things and then they'd happened on camera. Now we're going back to the usual swing of things where I say something and the game contradicts me. But yeah, Game FAQs says that 1, the dude with the predictions is usually right, and 2, you can run in front of people to slow them down, which I could never get to work consistently as a kid. Does it even work? Is this slowing you down at all? Yeah, I think that's just bullshit. I think we just got lucky. Is there anything else we need to do? Did we already get the notice to go to the science fair thing? Yeah, we're not even close on the lone sword. I think I'm just gonna... Pretty sure we can get a better sword right as soon as we get to the Middle Ages anyways, so I'm not gonna bother. So, okay, so she says no anyways, and even then he won't take it. Although they got that bit of dialogue there, of course, to cover the instance where you go and try and sell it to him, which I was clever enough to try as a kid on my second playthrough, but I might actually want the Karate Gi. That's a big defense increase, and I don't think we're getting anything better for a while. We'll just buy one. Nothing better to spend our money. So yeah, this is the kind of screen I was talking about. There was a screenshot of something like this in that walkthrough in EGM, and this was just like super intimidating to me. So as much as the rest of the text walkthrough of the game sounded really cool, like looking at something like this is like, oh my god, there's like 20 different numbers, and that's just like, it's like, what does all this mean? And I've got to remember like what all these stupid like letters mean too. We got pwr and spuds and stam. It's like, how am I supposed to keep track of all that? What does it all mean? And yeah, so seeing this just turned me right off of the game. It's like, oh, that'd be cool to see a Let's Play of, I guess, if Let's Plays even existed back in the day. To the extent that they did, it really would have been walkthroughs. That's something I've been sort of meaning. I think I might have talked about this before in my YouTube Let's Plays. There we go, that's what we were waiting for. Is there anything else to do around here? I think we're pretty much all set. Oh, did I actually equip, yeah, let's not forget that. Sell the old shit as well. And I think that's pretty much everything we wanted to cover in the present. Okay, that's enough of that. Nope, time's up. Get the fuck over here. You're being kidnapped. Okay, fine, we'll wait. I think that's everything. I think we've managed to run the entire gamut of criminal activity that's available to us at the fair. So that'll be fun. Hoping for a unanimous verdict come the trial. But yeah, just this kind of freedom to just like wander off, and mini games were a thing that were starting to be introduced a lot into RPGs, because I think, like I was saying, the core gameplay of these types of games is, like I said, pretty shallow and basic most of the time, especially since a lot of the time these were like, you know, kind of games intended for sort of little kids, kind of, especially stuff like Super Mario RPG. So there's not a lot of like depth or challenge to the combat or anything. So it's like to keep things interesting, to spice things up. You had a lot of mini games being introduced into JRPGs back around this time, especially during the PS1 era. Like FF7 was huge for mini games, or even Super Mario RPG. It was just like chock full of mini games, and I really do think that was. This is just me talking, but I really do think that was sort of an acknowledgement or a workaround for sort of the basic shallowness of the genre as far as combat and gameplay is concerned, which is, you know, fair enough, and it works. It works well in the games that it works. Like I like most of the mini games in Super Mario RPG. At least FF7 would not make my top 10 list these days. I actually sold my copy of FF7, the black label, not the greatest hits. So that's the one that's worth the big bucks. I think I made like, it's not tremendous. I think I sold it for like $70 back when I sold it, which is pretty good for like an old PS1 game that I never ever play anymore. But yeah. Oh, that's right. I was expecting like a time portal to open, but that's right. We're gotta let Marl onto the telepod. Yeah, and you got people saying different things based on what's going on in the game. That's another thing I kind of miss from back in the day, is NPCs with, I don't know if I would say worthwhile, but like, I don't know, amusing things to say. Grandia was really good for NPC dialogue. Frankly, all the Woolsey translated Squaresoft games were good for NPC dialogue. Modern, especially, yeah, like I was saying, starting from the PS2 era onward, not so much. Yeah, sure, we'll try it again. Actually, will they let me leave at this point? Okay, and Marl's just gonna stay there. There we go. I should really just call her Bulma to avoid all issues of the pronunciation. Or actually, one thing that I usually do, which I didn't think to do before this stream, but if you go on like the Final Fantasy wiki, like FF Wiki or whatever, I think there's Chrono Trigger on there too. But anyways, for Final Fantasy games with weird character names, what I'll usually do is I'll go on there and I'll look up the Japanese name, because Japanese pronunciations are completely unambiguous. The alphabet they use for fantasy names in Japanese is like it's based on the syllables. So you'd have something like Chrono would be like Ku Ro No, and there's no other way to read the symbols. It's just you say it the way it's written. And there's only one possible way to pronounce any given symbol or combination of symbols. So if you look up Marl's Japanese name, it would be completely unambiguous, and it would give you some clue as to the pronunciation. What would her Japanese name? It would probably be something like Meru, Maru, Maruru, something like that. I'd have to look it up. Maybe, because yeah, I'm probably not getting through the whole game today, so maybe that'll be something for before the next stream. Or actually, will they let me ditch Marl here? Again, this is the kind of thing that I would have been too cowardly to attempt back in the day, but I'm pretty sure she's gonna tell me not to. Yeah, there we go. You brought her here, you get her back. Well, you teleported her away, so you get her back. Yeah, that's not very. We're not a very heroic hero at this point in the game, I must say. Which I kind of appreciate that the game gives you that option, at least. I've actually been thinking a little bit, and again, this will probably end up sounding really pretentious, but I've taken a bit of interest into like the work of Joseph Campbell and the hero myth, or the mono myth, and I've been reading The Hero with 1,000 Faces lately, which is sort of his seminal work that it basically lays out the structure of the mono myth, which is just sort of this notion of sort of this one universal story that you see repeated across all of like religion, fairy tales. It's just like this common idea of like the hero's journey is the most common way that you see, the most common formulation of it, where you've got like the call to adventure, crossing the threshold, basically just the list of chapter titles if you read the table of contents of The Hero with 1,000 Faces. And I sort of got back into this in the thinking about it in the context of JRPGs and just RPGs and video games in general, and just how they sort of owe a lot to just that sort of mythological storytelling and the sort of that structure of like the monomyth and the hero's journey. And I was sort of thinking a bit about just how very, very neatly a lot of these old JRPGs fit into that format. And actually, one of the interesting things about Chrono Trigger is in a lot of ways, it kind of bucks that format, I think. Although on the other hand, in other ways it follows it if you kind of twist it. You actually see a little bit of that if you read The Hero with a Thousand Faces, where you where the overall structure is kind of vague enough that you can fit just about any story to fit it. Like, as far as the call to adventure, that would be Marle disappearing through the portal, and then accepting the call is just the fact that you have no choice but to go diving in after her. But what's interesting is he sort of relates it to just sort of, it's almost a sort of religious notion, as the idea of mythology and storytelling as a sort of model for how humans should behave in the world. Like the idea of that stories kind of set an example for how to live as a sort of moral fable, if you will. It's like the hero is someone you want to emulate, and the villain is a sort of amalgam of everything terrible in the world. It's what you'd call like an archetypal story, where it's like the main players in the story are sort of emblematic of not just individuals, but like a whole category, almost. Where it's like the villain of the story is like a... I don't know how to describe it. I need to read more of... I'm not too far into the book right now, but yeah, I should probably read more of it before I stream more of this and try to talk out of my ass about shitty academic-sounding nonsense. I am like years and years out of the College of English at this point, which I didn't even complete. I failed out of like second year because I'm a lazy piece of shit. But yeah, that was the kind of thing that I didn't study back in the day, because, like I said, I was a lazy asshole and I didn't read or write or anything, and failed out. But I've sort of thinking about getting back into that kind of things, which is part of the reason why I've taken an interest in this game in particular, and yeah, and just JRPGs in general. And actually, one of the I was thinking about like the different ways that I might want to sort of present this or go about organizing my thoughts, and I was thinking about maybe doing like a YouTube series, like a scripted thing, which I decided against because I'm a lazy asshole who can't be bothered to organize his thoughts and write them out. So yeah, this shitty rambly Twitch stream is what we get instead of that. But I'll maybe take some more notes from here on out. I've got like a little page of notes. Just that's like stuff to talk about if I run out of things to talk about, just playing through the game. But I can maybe think through things a little bit more and see if I can come up with a thesis to share with you guys about where Chrono Trigger stands with regards to the hero's journey and the monomyth. If anyone gives a shit, I doubt that you do. On the other hand, we could just play some fucking video games and, yeah, enjoy the game for what it is. You always get that kind of pushback when you sort of... When games discussion, or just discussion of art and storytelling in general, sort of disappears up its ass, as it were, and you end up talking about things in a sort of academic context. And that was sort of the approach... That was sort of what turned me away from academia and like English lit studies in particular, whereas it's just like all like someone's opinion, man, and you could like twist anything to be about anything. So like, what's the fucking point? Actually, and as stupid as that sounds, Sam Harris actually laid out the case for that kind of view, in the context of like religion and holy books and whatnot. And he lays out the argument for that kind of view very, very well, I think, in a podcast he did with Jordan Peterson, who I've also become a fan of late. I'd actually say he was watching Jordan Peterson lectures has been a bit of an inspiration for my sort of reawakening interest in like hero stories and whatnot, because I sort of realized that like this is sort of a thing I've been interested in for a long time. Like Star Wars was like the first movie that really captured my imagination. And in fact, to this day, it's probably the original Star Wars might be my favorite movie to this day, which is maybe kind of pathetic. But yeah, I don't know. These types of stories really grabbed me as a kid, and I kind of lost interest in them after a while. And I don't know, my interest has been kind of reawakened as of late. So here I am playing Chrono Trigger on stream. And this is another thing where my sort of increased knowledge of, just Japanese bullshit and weeaboo bullshit sort of helps my understanding of the game. We got Banta there, which is presumably the ancestor of Luca, and that's another stupid, ambiguously pronounced. Is it Lusa, Lucia, Luca, Luca? Whatever. She's Pan. She'll be Pan for this playthrough. I get the sense that this is her ancestor. And I always got that sense. I don't know why. Like, he's got the same sprite as her dad, but other characters do too. And the house is kind of almost in the same location, even though it's on the island in the present, and here it's across from the island. But the additional context I have now is if you go by a Japanese pronunciation, where it's like syllable by syllable, Banta is or I guess it's not backwards, or maybe it is. I don't know. Depending on how they formulate it, because you got Taban. Yeah. So it's basically Taban's name, Luca's dad's name, backwards. Only not in the English spelling, but in the Japanese spelling, where you would have something like Taban in Japanese and then Banta. So yeah, it's probably two characters reversed, most likely, in the original Japanese version. So that just enhances the connection between the two characters. And I don't know, maybe I'm just dense. Like, the connection between the two names is kind of almost clear enough in English, where you got Banta and Taban, but I don't know. I never made the connection as a kid, and it was only later in life, thinking about it in terms of the Japanese pronunciation and characters, that I sort of made the connection that, oh yeah, that must be her ancestor. Maybe there are other clues in the game that I've forgotten. I'm not sure. Man, I've got a lot of drink to go through, and I've already got it. Okay, we'll go through the event at the castle, and then I'll just take a quick bathroom break, because I've got to take a piss. Let's talk about the battle system. Battle system in Chrono Trigger. It's kind of your standard ATB system, which I guess was introduced technically by FF4, I want to say, even though they didn't have the bar back in those days. The underlying structure, though, was the same, where you've got sort of a time count, like an action bar, essentially, that fills up behind the scenes, and then FF6 just kind of showed you the bar, which really makes it a bit more strategic, because you can see just a little bit more strategic, where you can actually see who's going to act when, and sort of plan out the order of things. And I don't know, it gives you a better idea of what's sort of going on under the hood with regards to the battle system, sort of exposing that information. And you see a lot more games sort of taking that approach these days. And Grandia, I think, was the, like I said, sort of the best implementation of that, where it's not only do you get your character's ATB bars, but you've got like all of the enemies' ATB displayed as well, and you've got them all laid out in a line for you, so you can see exactly how quickly everyone's moving up the bar and who's acting when. And then also you could see what actions the enemy were taking as well, where you could put the cursor on the enemy and you would know what attack they were going to use next, and who they were going to use it on, and you could sort of increasing that amount of information that's available to the player just sort of makes the whole thing more strategic, I think. And Chrono Trigger was kind of the first step in that. And of course, the other huge innovation? I don't know, the huge new introduction that they made was, of course, the multi-tech system, where you got the double and triple techs with the different characters. Which is, I'm not sure how much strategy it adds to the game. It's more to the effect of, it gives you a bunch more different techniques to try out, at least, and some reason to try out different party formations and put different characters in your party. Because that was kind of a problem with RPGs back in these days. It's like you'd have your favorite team of whoever, get your your Cloud, Yuffie, Tifa team, and you just use them for the whole game, or use your favorite characters, and there's no reason to ever use anyone else. And you see that a lot in SquareSoft games, where they were increasingly, oh, Saturn Meteor, I don't know how long you've been sitting there, or if you're still even there. I wish I could put the timestamps on these chat messages. But yeah, well, welcome back to the stream. I'm gonna die here. Am I gonna die? Has he been doing 9 damage at a time? Whatever, we've got tonics galore, so I think we'll be fine. But, oh, and hey, we got a tonic there, too, so yeah, this was like a self-sustaining battle. Did we use another one? Oh yeah, actually, we might as well use that power tab. Might as well use that power glove. Probably. What do we got for starting equipment? Bandana. Is that a speed thing? Power glove is power plus... Ooh, it is a speed thing. I think... What do I think? We'll try the power glove and see if it helps us one-shot dudes that we couldn't one-shot before. And if it doesn't, then we might as well... Hey, shelter. Not gonna say no to that. Oh, and of course, so yeah, you got the double text, so there... Anyways, yeah, so yeah. Oh yeah, I remember now. FF games were sort of have more customizable skill systems, where you could sort of put the skills you want on the characters you want. And so there was... And the consequence of that is you could just put any character you want in your party. There's not much to distinguish them. And then on the other hand, you got the distinctive characters, where, like the older FF games, FF6, I guess, where it's like you got the Esper thing, but characters also have their own individual skills. So you could kind of pick your party based on which character skills you liked best. Like if you like, I don't know, Setzer's dice or whatever. Alright, you basically just pick the skills you like and put those characters in your party. Whereas Chrono Trigger gives you some incentive to experiment, where it's like not only... Because your character isn't just your character and their set of skills. You've got your character and their set of skills and all of their interactions with all of the other characters as well. So there's reason to mix and match and try out different combinations of characters in your party and see and just see all the cool animations and I talk all the time about I'm just a sucker for really just like excessively detailed sprite animation, and you see a lot of that with the attacks and spells in this game, where it's just frankly, even especially at the time, but even today, I think this is like a fantastic looking game, just aesthetically in general. The music, the sprite art. Whoa. I nudged my notebook. I guess I haven't really been going out of my... I've barely been working out of my notes here at all, and actually, yeah, that's one other thing, where the whole battle system kind of works... Where the whole animation... The battle system sort of brings out that strength in the animations there. Because the characters are really well animated, and the battle system sort of gives you a chance to show that off in this game, as opposed to... I lost my train of thought there again. Okay, we're going to explore the castle a bit anyways, though. Yeah, I hope this will come with practice. Although, frankly, it didn't last time I was on Twitch, so I'm not sure. But I've still not quite gotten in the hang of, in the habit of checking chat as often as I probably should. I'm still a little bit more in the YouTube Let's Play mindset, where I want to be talking about what's happening on screen all the time. What if I haven't heard of him? Is he going to insult me? Oh. Nah, never heard of him. From which land? Or am I simply a fool? A little of column A, a little of column B, I think. But, yeah, I think, yeah, just aesthetically, I think Chrono Trigger was actually sort of a big step forward for the genre. Like, you see a little bit of, like, the cute spider animations in FF6. They've got, like, their little finger waggy animation, and they got the laugh animation, you know. I suddenly feel I used to be able to like whip out like a stupid gesture or something like that during my Let's Plays, and I just whip it out. But now every single time I do something like that, I feel self-conscious all of a sudden because I'm on camera. And like, what the hell? But whatever, I'm just gonna keep mentioning that every time it happens until I get comfortable with it. But yeah, Chrono Trigger, definitely a step up in the animation department. That's the point I was making in a roundabout way. He's hungry. He's like passed out from hunger in the kitchen. Like, surely there's something for you to eat. Or actually, I guess there isn't. There's actually dudes in these chairs eating whatever this is. But yeah, speaking of just like unnecessary detail, just unnecessary extravagant sprite work, where you can sit down for a meal, and there's 3 different types of meal. There's one that refreshes your MP, which you can't, right? Your TP, I think it is? No, TP is technical points, which lets you learn spells. I think it is MP in this game. But yeah, you get 3 meals, all with their own unique sprite art. There's one that refills your MP, one that refills your HP, and one that refills your HP and your NP. There is no reason to ever eat any of these, frankly, because you can also just rest in the beds on the other place, and it's a lot quicker. So there's, efficiency-wise, there's just no reason whatsoever for this to exist in the game. It's pure flavor, so to speak. I'm so clever. Pure flavor, that's right. But, oh, you get that lovely sound effect and the... Oh, God, there's so many beautiful details. It's just like the... Wish I had a better... Should have stayed in English. I would have a better vocabulary for, these types of moments where I'm gushing about a video game. But I can't think of any better way to describe it than just, like, extremely flavorful extra details that, just give the game character. Which, again, I feel was really lacking in JRPGs starting at around the time of the PS2 era. And frankly, I think that was a lot of the appeal of Undertale back when that was a huge thing on the internet. And I think well-deserved. It kind of brought back that attention to detail, or yeah, it super brought back the whole attention to detail thing, and then some. Actually, this King Guardia sprite is another one that I had a difficult time parsing back in the day. I can't even see it. How I used to see it. It's like it was like where the way I used to see this, it would be like you couldn't see his eyes and the crown. It looked to me like his whole face was like part of his crown, and I can't even see it that way anymore. But yeah, anyways, that's just another example of a sprite that I used to see differently on my old blurry CRT. That's just like crystal clear now that I'm playing it on an emulator. So, sometimes I'll actually play games on emulation using like the different filters and stuff. I know a lot of people on the internet like really hate the emulation filters, but I find like the visual filters. But I find that there are some that I actually like. If I get the scan lines, like faint scan lines, I think actually look really good on old video games on most emulators. I've tried out some of the like the hardcore, like the filters that really try to emulate like the old CRT style. Oh, I'm gonna burp. But what was I gonna say? Yeah, I found a few that I like, but the problem is that when you're streaming or recording, you're running the video through a few extra filters. So like I remember I experimented with this once with my my Evo Search for Eden stream. Yeah, of course, I buy Karate Gi, and that's the first thing that gets replaced. I spend my money on Karate Gi, and it just gets instantly replaced for free without any effort whatsoever. Should have probably bought the special sword too, but oh hey, fonts is a good point too. I've actually been thinking I don't have a very good eye for details, especially like literally and figuratively, but mostly literally. I never used to, like, I really have to kind of strain myself to really notice the little details in visual works, and fonts are something that I never ever used to pay attention to in any context. And now suddenly I've had to think about fonts a lot when choosing graphics for like my stream and stuff like that. So like all of a sudden within the last couple days, I've had to pay like really close attention and like look at a bunch of fonts and kind of evaluate which ones are good and which ones are bad. And I think I just don't have a very good sense of visual aesthetics in general. Like, and I don't know what it is. It's been that way for as long as I can remember. I was always like the shittiest artist, even in like preschool. I was like a worse drawer, as we would say back in the day, than everyone else. And yeah, I don't know what it is. Personally, I have this theory that it's all tied into some sort of like weird spatial. And there's another thing where I can't portion things out correctly. Like if you ask me to cut a cake in half, one slice will be twice as big as another, and I won't be able to see it until after I've made the cut. I have a poor sense of spatial proportions in particular, which I think is why I have difficulty evaluating the merits of fonts. And I've never been like diagnosed or anything, but I have this theory that I have some kind of neurological condition, and that all of this is connected to the reason why I can't drive either. Like I can't make a right turn to save my literally can't make a right turn to save my life. So I just don't drive either. And I don't know, I have this theory in my head that it's all connected, and like all of this is for the same underlying reason. The reason I can't drive is the same reason I can't evaluate fonts or draw or cut cakes into 2 equal portions. That was a tangent and a half, my goodness. You see people criticize sometimes how these sort of old RPG tropes where it's like you've got the love interest and she's immediately the love interest. Like she says, even though she barely knows me, she's totally into it. She wants the D, I think is basically what that little speech was saying right there. And some people criticize like how quickly that plays out in these types of games. I was just like, oh yeah, she's attracted to him because every story has to have a romance, and that's the only reason. And I never bought that line of argument. First of all, you see that thing a lot of the time in real life, where people will be immediately attracted to another person, and just like go ahead with it like immediately. In fact, I'd say that sort of thing happens more often than not with a lot of people when it comes to relationships. And the other thing is that often there is a lot to sort of there are a lot of good, immediately obvious good qualities about these sort of RPG protagonists. Like I was talking earlier, and you were going back to it now, about like the monomyth and the hero's journey. Almost all of these RPG protagonists exhibit the qualities of a hero. They're proactive. They are good people. They go out of their way to help people. They're the sort of person who accepts the call to adventure and journeys out into the unknown and crosses the threshold to brave the dangers of the abyss beyond and cut up Tiamat and bring her pieces back to civilization, or whatever the fuck Jordan Peterson is on about all the time. But anyways, but what I'm saying is that these JRPG heroes, in their actions, in their characteristics, sort of generally fit into that archetype of the hero. And you see a lot of this discussion sort of nowadays with sort of what's attractive to a woman and that kind of thing. And I think I'm not going to bring it into that, because who the fuck am I to say what women want? But they're at least traditionally, in traditional storytelling, there's sort of the notion that is the sort of thing that women are attracted to, is the sort of hero archetype. The one with his foot in both worlds, who is connected to civilization and connected to the realm beyond, and sort of is the sort of intermediary between order and chaos. That's sort of like the idea, the basic description of what Joseph Campbell would say is like the archetype of the hero, I think, if I've got that right. And one of the things that was really interesting to me as I was reading, blanking on the title now, always blanking on titles, Hero with a Thousand Faces, is the way that my controller is not working all of a sudden. Okay, it's just going to keep doing this. We're just going to live with this. This is our existence now, where the controller just gets unplugged every once and again. It's not like this is a super intense action game or anything. In fact, is there even a pause function? I feel like you can, like, literally pause. Like, press start or select to pause during battle. Although, obviously, I won't be able to do that if the controller is not working, so no, that's not going to save me. But, anyways, what I was saying, it's really interesting to me just how little characterization is necessary to sort of establish that kind of hero archetype in an RPG. Like, it's not just... Still messing around with my headset now. Like, to the point where you can have these sort of silent protagonists who literally have no personality, never say anything, and yet somehow we sort of accept them as the hero and as someone who acts heroically. And most of that is just is through actions, through the sorts of things that the plot sort of forces you to do. Like, because, yeah, all the time in these stories, the hero is the one who accepts the call to adventure. And even the silent protagonist, that's like basically the defining moment of Chrono as a character, I think, that defines him as this sort of hero archetype, is when he steps forward and picks up the pendant. It's like, the girl gets sucked into the void and he goes right in after her. Or maybe after trying to escape from the fair a couple times, if you're playing it like the way we did. But, yeah, it's all about the action and what you do in the plot that sort of defines the hero, to the point where it doesn't really matter, like, what his personality is, or what type of person he is, or what his history or any of that is. And to the point where you often see these JRPG heroes who are like orphans with like no family history or no parents or anything present at all in the stories. You see that a lot in the Final Fantasy games, like to the point where it's oh right, you need to talk to the Sparkle. That's right. And even when you do see the parents, it's they'll just be like an NPC who's just like, okay, go out, be good, whatever. It's like, yeah, it's like that, like Chrono's mom in this game. Like, doesn't even seem aware of the fact that he's, like, out, like, saving the time-space continuum from disaster or whatever. Or I guess really just saving the world, essentially. Saving the future of the world. Which, again, going back to the game being sort of its time, is kind of a 90s thing as well. Where you've got this sort of idyllic, peaceful present where the sort of war and conflict is sort of a thing that exists in the past and is part of history, but going forward into the future, the biggest threat is, I don't know, from the giant space porcupine that's gonna come out and rain destruction on us. So it's like humanity is united at this point, and the only threats are from beyond humanity. Like humanity is a united front at that point, and they're sort of facing threats from beyond. There's almost sort of not like Cthulhu, not Lovecraftian mythos per se, but like the way you see it presented in a lot of modern media, where it's just the notion of threats lurking beyond the void that threaten all of humanity. And I've never actually read Lovecraft, so disclaimer there. But in sort of Lovecraftian derived works, you see that sort of theme presented a lot, where it's sort of people from different backgrounds sort of uniting behind their common shared humanity to defend the human race from the terrors that lurk beyond the veil of human consciousness or whatever. And you see a bit of that in Chrono Trigger, where it's like the real threat isn't the conflict between different groups of humans, but in the conflicts between humans and other unknown future threats, where we sort of transcended tribal human, and frankly, there's an element of that even in the past settings in Chrono Trigger, because every single past war in Chrono Trigger is between humans and non-humans, where you've got the humans versus the reptiles, or I guess there's a little bit of intra-group conflict between the mystics and the enlightened, in a sense. We're getting way ahead of ourselves now. Way ahead of ourselves now. Although I'm kind of eager to get to the Kingdom of Zeal, because there's a lot of interesting stuff to talk about there. But we'll try to keep things focused in the present, as it were. We're in the Middle Ages, wherever we happen to be. Yeah, I can't remember, but I believe they ditched the accent for frog in the retranslation for the DS version, which I think is a bit of a shame. It's kind of those bits of extra flavor where there's that tension between the literal translation and sort of adding additional flair to make things more palatable and entertaining to a North American audience. Oh, I don't have a good name. What's a good DBZ name for Frog? Oh, who's that little green guy? That little green Saturn Meteor. Are you a DBZ guy? Do you know the name? The name of the little green dude in the Ginyu Force? Because yeah, because you of course. Oh yeah, if I haven't explained this already for the VOD viewers. So yeah, the artwork and character designs and monster designs for Chrono Trigger are of course all made by Akira Toriyama, who's a very famous Japanese illustrator who's mainly known for the Dragon Ball series. And yeah, he did the art for Chrono Trigger. It's kind of funny how a lot of his influence is less evident in the game itself, but extremely obvious when you see the character artwork and that kind of thing. You know what, I'm just gonna look this up because this is gonna drive me nuts, and I can't. I haven't watched DBZ since I was a teenager, so and a young teenager at that. I watched DBZ from like when I was 12 to when I was 14, and then I grew out of it. But okay, who's the Ginyu Force? Or I guess we could just do Ginyu. He's a weird Goldo. That was it. Okay, so Frog is gonna be Goldo. Oh, does that fit? GUL. Yeah, that's 5 characters. Goldie? That could work, but no. Actually, you know what I'm gonna do? Just because I know this game's pretty easy, but I don't, and I've been saying throughout that it's pretty easy, but just to make sure that I don't embarrass myself and get schooled, I'm actually gonna go shopping to make sure that we don't get bodied by Yakra or anything. That's a residence. I feel like right here is the market. Oh yeah, and let's is there any more equipment? Or actually, yeah, here's a good idea, because this is a smart idea. So we got the sight scope here, which just shows you the enemy HP, and it's actually not entirely useless. It's a little bit helpful to be able to see the enemy's HP, so you can sort of optimize your attacks and sort of distribute the damage so that your heavy hitters aren't wasting any of their damage on guys who are, almost dead. But with that said, you can kind of intuit most of that, so we're actually going to give her some speed, because she's the slowest character in the party. Hey, we got the double power gloves going on here. That's awesome. Oh yeah, Dragon Quest is another one that it's weird. I used to be, and after I passed my DBZ phase, I was like super down on, sort of like I've been saying, like I was with JRPGs. I was super down on DBZ and Akira Toriyama in general after I grew out of my DBZ phase, just because the criticisms that you see about him, it's like all of his characters look the same, and they kind of do. Like I was saying earlier, you could, like I'm going with like the DBZ themed names, and you could pretty much name any female character Bulma, and it would fit, because he has like one archetype that he uses for female characters. It's kind of interesting though, because it's not just one version of Bulma. You've got the young Bulma with, I think she had the ponytail, Then you got the older teenage one with the straight hair, and the ponytail one, that's like, you know, kind of the Morrow archetype right there. And you got the straight-haired one, which is like the early bits of DBZ. That's Luca here. And then you got like the sexy MILF Bulma after she has a kid and Trunks and all of that, with like the kind of curly, frizzy hair. And that's the Ayla. So you've got like the entire range of visual templates for female Akira Toriyama characters, just encapsulated into the different versions of this one character, and that's just like really amusing to me. And yeah, that was a tangent and a half right there, but oh wow, that was actually really expensive. Why is the dart gun? And it only gives me 2 attack. What is... Whatever. Karate Gi, we don't need. Bronze helms, I could do for a couple of those. Right, you can equip right in the shop in this game. I completely forgot about that. I've actually got to go to the bathroom right now, so, and yeah, I hate that it's gonna turn the music, or actually, here's what we're gonna do, because yeah, it freezes the game when I switch over to my stream preview, but here's what we're gonna do. We are gonna... Just because I'm paranoid, I like to turn off my webcam when I'm not intending to be on camera. So, what we're going to do is, yeah, just toggle off the camera. We're going to go bathroom break. And, yeah, I am going to be back in a minute. And we're going to go back to the old placeholder. That looks really terrible, how that overlaps the background there. But... yeah, back in a second. Okay, we're back. I wish there were a way to automate more of the stuff that I do on streams because I'm just not. I don't know. Maybe I hope I'll get used to it because I have like waking nightmares about all the things that could go wrong. Like I'm not accustomed to being on camera and all of that. Like I have, and like just like being recorded and all of that. Like I remember just like the Dark Side Filth situation where it's like he ends his stream only he forgets to turn off the recording and he gets caught like masturbating or some shit and something. And you know, there but for the grace of God go I, because something somewhat similar, not really the same thing. Basically, I just forgot to turn the stream off after one stream like a year ago. I was doing a stream and then I turned, and then it's like, okay, bye guys, and I tuned into another stream and I left the recording on. And you know, that's nothing big, not a big deal, but it's just the fact that I forgot. I could have been doing any number of unsavory things and left the stream going, and that's gonna be. Also, I'm really, and it's also just about the fact that I'm like seeing myself the way, like I never noticed the space between my bottom teeth is like really bothering me. My dentist has talked to me about it a couple of times in the past, and I've been like, I don't give a shit. But now that I'm seeing myself on camera, it's really bothering me. I don't know. Maybe I'll. Maybe we can start a fundraiser to fix Jassie's fucking teeth. But I don't know. Nah, I don't have to. I've been thinking more about it lately. It would be really convenient for me if I could, if the whole streaming thing could take off and I could just get like a couple $100 a month of Patreon money or whatever. But I'm not banking on it. That's not the reason why I'm getting back into streaming. I'm just doing it for my own enjoyment and the fact that I kind of need something. Basically, my life is kind of stabilized at this point. Things were kind of up in the air for a while, and I didn't really know what the fuck I was doing with my time or with like my career or whatever. And now things have kind of stabilized to the point where I can say like, yes, I have a regular, consistent daily schedule, and I can say, yes, I will stream every day or every other day or whatever I decide from this hour to this hour because I have a regular sleep schedule now. So things have stabilized to the point where it's like I'm looking for something to do, and streaming was fun back in the day. So let's do that. And so that's kind of the motivation there. It would, and I'm not gonna lie, the notion of, you know, them Patreon bucks and whatever is kind of there in the back of my mind, but I'm not even gonna waste time setting that up until we can establish like a viewership and you know, set up, get an audience, and establish whether or not people are even interested enough in what I have to say to even start that kind of thing. But yeah, oh yeah, I had a tangent I wanted to finish on DBZ, and I forget what it was. You know, as much as I've been saying, RPGs are brain dead and stupid, and you don't have to put any thought into them. Maybe we need to put in a little bit more thought than we've been doing so far. maybe use some of those tonics once people get down to 10 HP. Because yeah, I'm kind of just running on autopilot at this point. I'm really bad for talking and playing any text-heavy game. Just like any reading and... Or you know what? Okay, that's good. Yeah, I'm really gonna have to get it set up so that it won't pause the game every time I go to check stuff with the stream. But yeah, let's use a couple tonics. Actually, let's not. I'm sure we can survive to the next save point or whatever. And hey, we got a revive, so yeah, we're fine. Oh yeah, Dragon Ball. I've kind of grown, similar to how I've sort of regained my appreciation for some JRPGs, if not most of them. I've sort of gained a bit of an appreciation for Akira Toriyama's art style as well. Don't get me wrong, it's still like obviously derivative, where it's like I can play Dragon Quest Warriors, and it's like, okay, that's Goku with a different hairstyle. Okay, that's Gohan with a different hairstyle. Okay, that's... And it's not even that different a hairstyle. It's like Gohan with a different hair color. It's like, oh, that's Gohan, that's Trunks, that's Gohan, that's Trunks, and that's basically all of his characters. They all look the same. And that's kind of... But the monsters The monster designs are interesting, though. They're all kind of the same style. They're all recognizably Toriyama designs, but I still kind of like them. I actually enjoy the Dragon Quest Warriors games, just because you get to see those, like, you get to see those Toriyama monster designs sort of acted out fully. That's part of the reason why I really appreciate sort of the 3D revolution in games, where you see a lot of these old 2D properties being brought back in 3D, and I just... Mainly, it's just, I think it's really... Or you know what I should be doing? We've got skills, don't we? Let's use some of our skills. Like, this would be a great circumstance for a cyclone. Whatever, 2 dudes is good enough. If I'd have done it right away, we could have gotten all 3, but since I didn't, we'll just do the 2. Actually, it's smarter to do the other one. It's probably not even worth having her attack. I might just... Okay, I think I'm gonna switch the cursor to memory, because this is driving me nuts how I'm doing these suboptimal attacks. But yeah, the thing is, as long as the... Because yeah, basically what you'll look at any Toriyama property, and it's like you'll have like one Goku archetype, one Vegeta archetype, usually 2 Gohan archetypes, adult Gohan, that is, that seems to be his favorite. And then, you know, your one Bulma pasted across all the different female characters in various, in her various iterations. But, just 1 second, please. I'll be back in a moment. Okay, are we back online? Okay. Yeah, I still need to have the talk with my parents where I tell them to please fuck off when I'm recording. Unless the house is on fire or something. But it's okay. We'll get that sorted out before the next stream. Anyways, what was I talking about? I was still on the DBZ tangent. My appreciation for Toriyama's artwork has grown a little bit. And it's oh yeah, and, yeah, seeing like these old classic 2D designs acted out in 3D is really cool. I think it's just so cool to see these like old Dragon Quest like sprite-based monster designs and seeing them in like full 3D animation. Oh, excuse me. Animation. Like I just love the Dragon Quest Warriors games. Or the one game, I guess, because that's the only one I've played. But I just like the idea more than... yeah, that's one of the main things that makes that game appeal to me. Yeah, we're just going to stick everything on Goku, actually. He's our main man. Or a Steel Saber. Oh, did we just replace the sword that we just bought? Fucking hell, I should just not buy anything in this game. Oh yeah, we should probably heal our characters too. Oops, I locked up for a second there. We're actually running low on tonics. You know, maybe this game isn't as... Well, we're gonna go with that. Maybe this game isn't as brain dead and easy as I remembered. Maybe we have to put some effort in. So yeah, it's not gonna be super embarrassing if I, like, die or anything. Because this game isn't easy. That'll be the reason. Yep. Okay, let's, it's the main thing is I'm not used to... I'm used to, like, very quick, like, action-based games when I'm talking. Like, I can do, like, an autopilot, like, Sonic the Hedgehog stream, or, like, any 2D platformer that I'm well acquainted with. I can, like, talk about anything in any amount of depth, and it won't affect anything, because, like, Sonic the Hedgehog, Ristar, all of that shit is just like pure reaction, pure lizard brain at this point with those games. But like I said, I haven't played Chrono Trigger or really any JRPG in like years and years and years. So it's kind of a new mode of thought that I kind of need to get into that I haven't yet, that has not yet gelled with my sort of commentary style just yet. So we're going to see if we can sort that out. Oh yeah, this is cute. I don't think it's even possible to trigger a fight with these guys. Oh yeah, speaking of, yeah, ambiguous sprites too, is that her tongue there? Like, this Naga sprite, I wanna examine this a little bit for a few different reasons. I always thought that was her tongue sticking out there, which sort of changes the picture of the whole thing. It makes it completely unattractive. Like, you got the tits, at least, which you can see right there. I know, Saturn, you're into that. Frankly, I am too. But I don't think I've ever actually seen, like, official artwork for this one, so I'm kind of curious. And the face looks like it could be kind of hideous. She looks like some kind of, like, stupid goblin thing with its tongue sticking out. Like, what the fuck? That's just, like, a total boner killer right there. The long finger, the long claws, you could kind of go either way with. I could see some people being into that, but yeah. Anyways, I don't know where I was going with that, but yeah, that sprite just still looks really weird to me, even now with the enhanced clarity of the like sharp picture offered by emulation. That sprite still looks really weird to me. Hey, we got the more G's. Actually, can I get away from this without fighting these guys? Oh yeah, as long as you don't talk to them, you won't fight them. But like I said, we're going to be doing a thorough playthrough here. So we're gonna fight all the dudes, gain all of the levels. Also, yeah, like I was saying, I want to gain the TP so we can appreciate all of these lovely, all of the lovely sprite animations. Although frankly, there's actually one sprite we're going to completely miss out on if we do all of the battles. Because there's the one... I never even knew about this. I don't think I've ever... Or I might have seen it once or twice. But there's... Because you got Specchio later on in the game, and he has different forms depending on how much you've leveled up. And his first form is a pink frog, I think it is, or something like that. But... it's really difficult to actually see that one. You have to be like super low leveled to see Specchio as a pink frog. Most of the time, you'll see him as the little furry white thing, which weirdly enough is his only sprite, I believe, that isn't palette swapped in any way. All of these other sprites are just palette swaps of different monsters, but the I forget what it's called, but the little white furry thing from the prehistoric era is the one sprite of his that is the same color as the regular one. And yeah, that's the one that you're most commonly going to see him as in the first place. I wonder if that's deliberate, or if there's just some reason why you can't palette swap primarily white enemies. Are there many white enemies in the game? I think one of the variants of the winged apes are white. But, yeah, whatever. Oh, hey, we got our first dual tech. Nice. Yeah, and yeah, we definitely wanted that before the Yakra fight. Oh, I wanted to go back and fight those guys, but whatever. But yeah, we haven't saved, like, literally at all yet. Because, yeah, this is from my test playthrough, so yeah, let's actually... That would have been a disaster, wouldn't it, if we'd have, like, died at the Naga fight in the shrine or something like that. My goodness. Or actually, we could shelter, but I don't think we need to... But yeah, what I'd really love to see, because I'm a little bit of a fan of the Warriors series, Dynasty Warriors, Samurai Warriors, and all those. And I'm like, in concept, I really like the idea of them expanding those games to new franchises. They do like the different anime series. You got the One Piece Warriors and the Dragon Warriors, or I guess it's Dragon Quest, both in America and Japan now. But yeah, Dragon Quest Warriors. I'd love to see that expanded to even more and more franchises, because the Warriors concept is just a really... It's basically just like a really brain-dead 3D brawler with like a billion characters with a billion special moves, which is like kind of right up my alley. I love... As long as it's a property or a franchise that I'm like interested in. And like I guess I'm not really interested in Dragon Quest, I guess, but I like like I said, I like the Akira Toriyama designs, and I think they translate really, really well into 3D. So I like Dragon Warrior. In fact, I like the Dragon Quest Warriors games like a million times more than I like the Dragon Quest games. Like I did, like I was talking about, I did my top 10 JRPGs list. Actually, Dragon Quest VIII did make it onto that list. It was barely made it in at number 10, and I wouldn't ever play that game again. My goodness. Okay, let's go for... Oh, that's a bat there. I thought it was just, like, targeting nothing. Ha ha ha. That's interesting, that Saturn, that you bring up the notion of like games as cooking. I use a similar metaphor, but I actually like the idea of games as a restaurant, or that just because it's sort of an expanded view of things. Like you've got the food, which is the gameplay, but there's also really like ambience and atmosphere is a big thing, part of the restaurant experience, in a way that like plating and visual aesthetics isn't that big a part of an individual meal. So I think the idea of a restaurant as a whole, and the notion of like the selection of menu items too, being like different tastes that a game can cater to, and the different options and the different ways you can tailor a game to meet your own preferences. You see, especially in modern games, less so in old games, but more in modern games, where you see like the huge saturation of different game modes to appeal to a lot of different types of players. And then you stack on top of that like community and ambience and atmosphere. And yeah, I haven't actually talked about this, I think, ever, actually, so this is a new topic for me, but I should be using my Cyclone when they're grouped up like that. We'll do it. Or actually, let's Flame Toss on this guy, since we can't seem to hit him. Now, don't get me wrong, I think the meal thing applies better to older games, where, like I said, they're a bit more focused, a bit more singular in what they tend to do. But a lot of modern games where you got like DLC, especially with like the notion of DLC, and you see the notion of games as a sort of service platform, where it's like you've sort of expanded beyond individual dishes into the notion of a full-blown restaurant, and just the notion of whether you're going to have like a broad appeal with a bunch of different things to choose from on the menu, or whether you're going to specialize, be like your weird like hipster tofu joint or something, which I have eaten at, actually. I've eaten at a restaurant where it's like you got like 8 different items on the menu, and like all of them are made with like kale and tofu or whatever, which is not really my thing, but you know, so-and-so real life acquaintance wanted to go there for their birthday, so whatever. But yeah, you see a lot of different breadth of experience and what different restaurants offer, and you see the same thing in video games as well. So that's a metaphor I think this is literally the first time I've ever actually vocalized this, but mentally, that's the sort of comparison point I use. Oh, self-service, that's an interesting notion too, with the idea of like the Steam Workshop and mods and all of that. Yeah, the more we go into it, the more I think that the restaurant is a really not a perfect analogy or anything, mind you, but like an interesting model for just the idea of what a game can offer. Oh no, you guys have experienced my embarrassing ringtone now. I'm actually not ashamed of it at all. I love the... that comes from Shadowverse, which is a digital CCG, basically a Hearthstone clone that I used to play a whole bunch. I've actually made a couple videos, just simple replays of Shadowverse on my YouTube channel. I've kind of fallen out of it just because the metagame has kind of gone in shitty places in the last couple of expansions, and also I don't think it was good for me mentally. I would waste a lot of time every day playing Shadowverse and not really having fun at it, and just kind of raging at the fact that I can't win enough games to get my daily missions done. So I've really severely cut back on the Shadowverse lately. But anyways, that's where that ringtone comes from. That is the Bellringer Angel. And actually, speaking of which, let's actually look at what they have to say. fuck? It says that my pizza has arrived, but I haven't ordered any pizza. I'm just gonna go off and check the door to make sure that my parents didn't do anything stupid like order pizza. And expect me to pick it up for them. Why would that even... Or, you know, oh, that's probably my... Okay, that's probably my uncle. Because, yeah, a bunch of my relatives are in town for a big wedding this weekend. So, yeah, that's probably someone texting me to let me know that supper is here. Okay, we're gonna keep going. We're gonna go to the end of this dungeon. We're gonna fight Yakra, and then we're gonna take a little supper break. I don't think it'll be a complete break. Maybe we can try out some social eating, I guess, if anyone happens to be in chat by the time I beat Yakra. But no, actually, there's this dude sleeping here. How do I want to fight this dude? Is he gonna call his buddies? Oh, he isn't. Okay. Just like a one-on-one, or three-on-one, I guess, which is kind of unfair, but... I could have sworn that those guys typically had more HP than that, but whatever. Hey, free XP! Our little monster kid there. I actually watched, God, I just realized now, I watched all of Joseph Anderson's Undertale streams. Like all of his playthroughs, every single one of them, the full way through. That's like 16 hours of streaming, and I literally watched all of it. It's just so... Undertale is one of those games that's almost more interesting to watch people play it than to play it yourself. Especially if you're familiar with the game already, because it's just really interesting to see how people react to things. And again, I'm just going to be constantly plugging my YouTube channel, which... as I'm doing these Twitch streams, my YouTube channel. Now that my YouTube channel is dead and I'm not doing Let's Plays anymore over there, I'm just going to be constantly referencing it when I'm doing my Twitch streams. Yeah, we can do for one tonic there, I think. Oh, actually, Saturn, if you're into the anime tits, you might be into Shadowverse. Although, frankly, that's just card artwork. But yeah, there's a lot of boobage, anime boobage, on the Shadowverse cards. And frankly, even apart from that, it's just really stellar artwork in general. I absolutely love a lot of the card art in Shadowverse. But as mechanically, if you've played Hearthstone, you've basically played Shadowverse. It is basically a one-to-one clone of the game mechanics in Hearthstone. Except they actually made it better. It's not just the anime boobs that makes me prefer Shadowverse over Hearthstone. I think it's actually a better game. They've diversified the classes a whole bunch more than Hearthstone. Maybe I'll do a Hearthstone. No, to clarify, no, I will never do a Hearthstone stream, but I might do a Shadowverse stream at some point. It might be tricky since I'm like way behind in collecting cards. I haven't played at all during the current expansion, so I have like no cards from the newest set. But, yeah, anyways, I was talking about Undertale. Super interesting to see how people react to that game. Whether they like it or hate it. Either way can be really interesting. Okay, we're gonna... Oh, actually, we got some equipment. Yeah, I'm just, like, on autopilot here, when I really shouldn't be. Because there's, like, stuff that I need to be paying attention to. Like equipping my equipment that I get when I get it before a boss fight. I think we're all good. Does Sight Scope work on the boss? I guess it doesn't matter. We're just going to hit him with everything we've got. Oh, right. I wanted to switch to memory mode on the cursor. In fact, I should probably switch out my options in general. Okay, so stereo on. That's probably good. We could probably stand for slightly faster battles, I feel like. Battle message. Yep, all of that is fine. Or actually, might even want to go slower battle messages. Window color. I know some people like the blue, just because it's kind of evocative of classic Final Fantasy. I prefer the darker backgrounds when it comes to just like text on a background. I prefer the dark backgrounds. I prefer white on black over black on white. In fact, on websites like Twitch or you know, Xvideos or whatever, if they offer like a dark background version of the site, I'll typically go with that. Out of these, I honestly, and this is a little bit too dark and a little bit too plain, though. I honestly think I do prefer number 2. I go number 2 sometimes, but yeah, I think I'll stick with number 1. Battle mode wait is good. Save menu cursor, that's what we want to change. Because yeah, a lot of the time... Or actually, you know what? Yu-Gi-Oh! I feel like I'm like way behind on these chat. Or can I position this somehow? Like I gotta... Like if you can see... I can actually demonstrate this now because I got a webcam. Like just look at chat. This is what I gotta do to look at chat. I gotta go like this. Like here's me at the camera. Here's me looking at chat. Camera, chat, game. Camera, chat, game. That's a big head turn to sort of keep track of what chat is. It would be nice to just have a second monitor, except my desk and the space I have to work with in this room is really tiny, so I simply do not have space on in here for a second monitor. But yeah, so my apologies. But I will be really late in responding to any chat message for the foreseeable future. But yeah, Yu-Gi-Oh! I used to play Yu-Gi-Oh! On the Game Boy back in the day. Not like on the Game Boy, but Game Boy Advance emulation. I got into back when I was big into emulation, I got into a bunch of Game Boy Advance games, and Yu-Gi-Oh! Is one of the ones I'd play. I played Yu-Gi-Oh! While listening to like podcasts and stuff. And I see on Steam, there's like an online, I don't even think it's online actually, there's whatever it is, there's a Yu-Gi-Oh! Game on Steam that I'm really interested in. I might stream that someday. I've got a big old list of games that I'd like to stream someday. Yeah, I'm not big into the MMOs. In fact, I've basically never played an MMO. Like back when I first got into Diablo 2, which was actually not that long ago. I was in college when I started playing Diablo 2. The game had been out for... Well, Diablo 2 was like 2000 or something like that. So I would have gotten into Diablo 2 like a good 6-7 years after it came out. But when I did, it came with a demo for World of Warcraft. And I played that for like 4 hours. And it was the most boring fucking thing I think I've ever experienced. And I've never played another MMO ever since then. I just do not... Because it's mostly a social thing, I realize. You really need to be getting into like the guilds and the partying and all of that kind of thing. Whereas I'm more of a solo farmer type guy. So yeah, I'm just not... Really, I'm not much of a social person in real life, but I'm even less of a social person on the internet. Like, I'll do my Twitch stream where I just like yap into the void and maybe react to people who are talking at me in chat. But like to actually do like the whole social media and the forum thing, like I've posted in forums occasionally, but I have like never ever stuck with it. I've abandoned every forum I've ever frequented within like less than a year. I don't think I've ever been a member at a forum for more than a year. I just lose interest. I lose interest and I get self-conscious and I hate writing things up, and I don't know, I don't get along. I can kind of get along with people face to face, voice to voice, like talking like this. The main thing is voicing things as opposed to writing things. I think I'm a good writer. I think I can get across, or I know I'm a good writer. I've been told I'm a good writer in school. Like, my teachers used to say that back in the day, but that doesn't really come across in online communication. Whenever I used to post in, like, forums and chats and stuff, I feel like I'm just constantly being misinterpreted and misunderstood, and there's just, like, no way I can make things clearer to people. And it's just really frustrating. That's always happened to me in online forums, where I've just gotten, like, really just annoyed and frustrated with people going text to text. But voice, I do much better with. I don't talk to people a lot in real life, but, you know, I can do it if I have to. I can Twitch stream, and I can talk to the void at the internet about video games if I have to. But, yeah, never got into, like, the whole Twitter, forums, all of that. It's just not for me. After, like, trying it out many different times, I think I've tried getting in, being a member at, like, 4 or 5 different forums since I was like 12, and I just like always just like, no, this is not for me, and I'm just done with it at this point. I'm like, the notion of communicating with people via text is just... It sounds conceited, and it probably is, but I feel that people are generally bad at reading, especially on the internet. And I'm not talking just literacy, but like things like subtext, or just like interpreting like the points that people are trying to get across, especially when it comes to contentious subjects. And I'm sure you could go into like socio-psychological reasons why that is. There's actually some YouTube channels I follow that get into that kind of stuff that are interesting, but I'm not really enough into that field to comment further on it. But it's something that would be theoretically interesting to me, I think, if I weren't such a lazy bastard and never bothered. It's weird. I'm theoretically interested in so many things if I weren't so lazy and couldn't be bothered to actually investigate any of them. Do I need to comment on the story? I feel like of this game. I feel like there's not much to say beyond like that's kind of what happens when you start reading Joseph Campbell. Is there's like not really much to say about any story anymore. It's just like, yep, this is crossing the threshold. This is the spirit guide. this is the call to adventure. Actually, there is a bit of something to say, I guess, in terms of the structure of this game in particular. How you don't like I was saying, how there's like no point to all of this. You don't get like, you know, the big background war and the big text crawl in the beginning telling like that's the JRPG trope, is you get like that crawling text at the beginning that tells you what the conflict is, what the story's going to be about. It's like, yeah, the heroes rise and get the crystals and defeat chaos and whatever the story's going to be. You really don't get that in this game. The story just kind of plays out in front of you, and you don't really know what it's going to be. And it's kind of, I think that's part of what endeared me to the game in the first place, why I liked it so much, because it's really, you don't really know what's coming as you go through the game. Like you've got like kind of a series of vignettes that aren't even connected necessarily in the early game. Like you've got sort of your introductory adventure that introduces time travel and and a few of the characters of the game, but you don't really get to the central conflict until like a fair bit into the game. I'm not even paying attention to any of this. I think I like Bulma better than Merle. So we're just gonna go with that instead. I'm gonna keep calling her Bulma. No, that's gonna get confusing because I actually talk about Bulma the character sometimes. One other thing I've become more mindful of is silly things you can do with animations in video games, especially 3D games. There's some funny stuff you could do with the character walking animations in Final Fantasy XIII, for example, that I really liked. But even in 2D games, you can have some fun. Or actually, let's get them soda mashing skills going. That is some silly shit right there. But anyways, yeah, there's sort of an introductory segment to this game before you get into the main story. And it flows really nicely, I think. Where it's like there's a purpose to everything. There's a reason for you to be going back into the past and a reason for you to escape the present again, and then it just kind of flows nicely into, oh, here's the future, and it's a shitty future, so go fucking do something about it. Or we'll talk more about that. It always seems so weird to me that it's like you go into the future and it's like, oh my god, turns out this giant space porcupine is going to obliterate humanity 1,000 years in the future. I guess it's up to us to do something about it. It's like, what the fuck? It's like, who thinks that way? It's like, oh, space porcupine? Gonna destroy the whole Earth? I'm gonna fight it. This is my job to fix this. It's like, who... And again, that's going back into the notion of the hero. And, so sort of taking responsibility for the future of humanity and taking the weight of humanity's survival onto your shoulders and all of that. I shouldn't even bother trying to talk about this nonsense. You should really, frankly, just either read The Hero with a Thousand Faces by Joseph Campbell. You go educate yourself, I say, even though I'm like barely 100 pages into the thing myself right now. Or Jordan Peterson. also has some really interesting. I should try and pick out some good lectures of his, but he really goes into the notion of mythology, the notion of like ancient mythology in the role of human psychological and moral development in a really interesting and compelling way, I think. Yeah, he's done a lot to sort of reawaken my interest in these types of hero myths and fantasy stories and that type of thing. Or actually, there's actually one other thing, or we can talk about it later, I guess. There's one other thing that kind of interested, or you know what, we've got a karate gi. We can totally give that to her. Oh yeah, one other funny thing about the character makeup, the distribution of the characters in Chrono Trigger. So yeah, you sort of got a representative from each time period. Like you've got Frog in the Middle Ages, you've got Ayla in 60 million BC or whatever, you got Robo in the future, and actually I guess, yeah, even from the Ice Age, you've got Magus, technically. And then you've got your 3 representatives from the present. And again, I never thought about this until, like, in the modern day, with sort of the context of anime to aid me in this, is if you look at sort of, and not just anime, but good old Anita Sarkeesian as well, getting me to think about things in gendered terms. You look at, like, the makeup of the party here. You got an ordinary dude, who's your hero. You got a weird frog monster. You got a weird robot. You got a weird vampire. And then you got 3 sexy ladies. This is basically a harem anime composition right here. Which is, I never would have made that connection in the past. I wouldn't have even known what the fuck a harem anime was back in the day. But yeah, if you look at the makeup of the party, the only regular humans you have are your one hero and your 3 sexy ladies. And that's just hilarious to me. Or, you know what, these guys were different the first time around, so we're gonna fight them this time. We got the full party this time, we can manage it. We got the Rolly Rider. Okay, now that I've brought it up, oh yeah, I want to rest at the end. We're lucky we survived that. Since I brought it up, I want to talk since I name-dropped Anita Sarkeesian, I haven't watched her videos at all, but the notion... I took a little bit of, like, what was it? There was... Back in college, there was a class I took that I found really interesting. I never did any work or wrote any essays or read hardly any of the material for it, but I found the lectures really interesting. It was like critical perspectives, something or other, and it's all about the notion of... sort of approaching different literary texts from different perspectives, and the ones we covered in class were, again, sort of typical of, like, I had no idea of, like the whole idea of, like, the university campus is, like, this leftist, like, cult indoctrination thing. I had, like, no experience of that whatsoever in my university experience, so I thought things were pretty balanced and fair. Like, yeah, I had none of, like, the whole... Like, I don't know, and maybe the extent to which people talk about that stuff nowadays is exaggerated. I'm long out of the university by now, so maybe that stuff arose since I was in university, or maybe it was there and I didn't notice it, or maybe people nowadays are just, like, exaggerating and talking shit and whatever, but I had, like, no experience of the whole, like, SJW cult indoctrination thing that people complain about in universities nowadays. But I did take one course where we took... the notion of, approaching literary works from different critical perspectives. And the perspectives we covered in the course were the Marxist... we did a Marxist, feminist, and... I can't remember. It might have been something racial as well, perspective. Although it didn't even occur to me that this was, like, some sort of, like, politicized thing back then. Because I thought they approached it in a really fair way. It's just like, yeah, these are ways that you can interpret these texts that people have taken these approaches throughout the ages, and you can kind of use that lens as a tool to sort of gain a greater perspective on so sort of the position of these texts in society and as a reflection of not just society at large, but like the human individual psyche as well. And it's, I don't know, it seemed really fair and not politicized at all when I took it. But yeah, that was like the closest thing I ever experienced to like lefty social justice warrior crap in university. And even then, I thought it was completely reasonable, and I still do at the time. But anyways, at the time, it got me thinking, and if I had not been such a lazy bastard, I would have actually written this, is the notion of gender roles and gender archetypes in JRPGs, in particular with the Lunar series. The more I thought about gender roles as relates to the Lunar games, Lunar Silver Star and Lunar Eternal Blue, and the way that the way the game kind of reinforces and at the same time subverts gender stereotypes, or not really stereotypes even. I'd say archetypes would be more correct in this context. But yeah, it got me thinking about that, and it was like it was something that never would have occurred to me if not for this university class. And then years later, when the whole feminist frequency fracas occurred online, it sort of got me thinking about that again. And I actually wrote out notes for a video essay I wanted to do on the channel about, like I said, or I was going to call it tropes versus moon women in video games, because, you know, Lunar takes place on the moon. But I like I said, I'm such a lazy. It wasn't even like the possible, like, I don't know, blowback. Oh my god, look at his hair. Look at his fucking hair. It's just like staying put. His hair like doesn't move at all if you tap the button. That is hilarious. It's like he's moving around underneath his hair, and it's just like static. That is great. Anyways, but yeah, I think I could, if I weren't such a lazy bastard, I feel like I could do something interesting with that. So again, I feel like all of these stupid half-baked ideas that I have for like video essays and stuff that I always said I would do on YouTube someday, I'm thinking maybe we just pull that into like a rambly, nonsensical Twitch stream someday. It's like maybe someday I do a Lunar Eternal Blue stream, and I just, yeah, talk bullshit about gender for 40 hours, and then that can be a stream. But, oh, the gig is up. Actually, now that I think of it, because I remembered there being the unique dialogue for when you introduce her to Boma here. But actually, I think you get unique dialogue with Mom for all of the characters when you first introduce them to her. And again, just like those lovely details. Actually, Luca went away back to her house, didn't she? Let's see if she has anything to say. Wait, what? Two-legged walking humanoid robots are virtually impossible to create. You literally created one. It's walking around. Not only does it walk, but it like punches the shit out of your girlfriend if you slash it with a sword. Like how much, if it's that impossible to get them to walk and talk, how much harder is it to get them to to going back on the gender thing, to abuse women at the Millennial Fair? Are we good on HP? Or even if we aren't, we'll be able to take a rest in the prison cell. Yeah, there is the notion of like how because yeah, pretty much like every sort of, I can't even say endeavor, because like I've had a lot of it's tough to say. It's like I'm a creative person, I think, in that I like to create things in my mind, but I'm also actually, okay, well, we can go into this. Like I've talked about how I've been a bit into Jordan Peterson videos, and I've watched his lectures on personality as well, so I'm somewhat familiar with the modern sort of measures of personality and psychometrics from watching his lectures. So I've got a kind of a sense of like how my personality measures up from a psychometric perspective in the field of psychology. And like if I had to guess, I would say that I am probably high in Or actually creative, no, I would be high in openness, but like as low as you can possibly get in industriousness. So I like have a bunch of different ideas, but I never ever follow through on them. Like never even make the first move to follow through on any of them. Like, you know, like the gender lunar essay I talked about, and a dozen different game design ideas that I have, and a bunch of different ideas for other video essays and stuff, and I just think about them and never ever do them. It's just all in my head. And then it just decays over time because I never actually put it out there. So it's all just like fragments of half-formed ideas. Okay, this is the moment of truth where we see if we actually got the unanimous verdict here. But anyways, like I was saying, virtually every idea I've ever had for anything, about anything, has been inspired by art of some kind. Mostly fiction. I should say fiction or literature. Either like like every video game idea I've ever had has been inspired by another video game. Every essay idea I've ever had has been inspired by either a book or a movie or a video game. It's just I'm not able to formulate ideas on my own. It always has to be in relation to something else. Oh shoot, I answered wrong there. I should have lied. Oh, I hope that doesn't. I hope my honesty doesn't persuade any of the jurors in my favor here, because I'm going for unanimous condemnation here. Yep, you got me. Criminal abduction. I confess. No, I can't confess, though. I have to lie my ass off so that they'll think I'm even more of a scumbag. Love this scene, by the way. The music is phenomenal. The background. I love this background. In fact, what I wanted to do is I wanted to set up the like the background to the chat window there. I wanted to set that up as like the trial scene here. I wanted to set it up so you'd have like the jurors you see over there and the audience down there, and that like right half of the screen would be your background for the chat. But I couldn't find the right sprite for it, and I couldn't find one that cuts out Pierre there. Yep, that's right. You get peanut. If you don't talk to her at all, you get off the hook a little bit. It's not as good as if you help her, Cat, but if you don't talk to her, then this doesn't happen. But if you talk to her and don't help her, Cat, I've never been a thief. Oh no. The chickens have come home to roost! I'm probably drinking too much. I think that's against Twitch's terms of service, isn't it? I really should have reviewed that before I decided to start this streaming thing. But I'm sure we're fine. We're still cogent. I'm not offering donation incentives to drink more vodka or anything, so we're fine. But this is just hilarious. I love this scene. The idea that it's... the idea that... And on one hand, this is a thing you see in a lot of modern games, where it's the notion of like choices and consequences, where you're making meaningful decisions. And here you see like kind of a prototype of that here, where it's just like your actions matter, but it's just kind of in the service of a gag. In fact, again, going back to Undertale, you see a lot of that in Undertale, where it's like your choices sort of carry forward into the game, but it's mostly in service of stupid gags. And that's kind of what this is here. But even then, in service of just a stupid gag, it's great. It's still meaningful, even if it is just in service of the meaning of stupid gags. This is just a hilarious scene. The notion that that you're taking a free lunch off of a table, it condemns you as a kidnapper. And again, this sort of thing existed in PC RPGs back in the day. Like if you had played Ultima or whatever, this is primitive bullshit to you, I'm sure. But like I said, this was my first experience of RPGs. Yeah, that's right. We went the whole hog on this one. We went the whole hog. Tried to sell it to Melkar, and then he did it again in her presence. Oh, right, and we kidnapped her as well. I wonder if it changes. I never actually tried it. Because she only says the kidnapper line if you drag her away twice. I wonder if you get off the hook if you just do it once. Okay, here it is. Moment of the truth. Moment of truth. We want everyone to line up on the left. Good. That's I gotta get that as like a ringtone or something. Actually, that would be good if I can get that for Twitter notifications on my phone. That would be a good sound effect for Twitter notifications. Awesome. We are the scum of the earth. This is the genocide run. We genocided the Millennial Fair. No survivors. Everyone lining up on the left. Actually, speaking... I've talked before about parsing sprites. I'm having a difficult time with whatever the hell is going on with these jurors' heads right there. Is that supposed to be like some kind of like weird like Pope hat or like poofy hair like you see the Japanese hooligans have sometimes in video games? Yeah, I don't know if I've ever seen artwork of those dudes either, so it's like, yeah, really difficult to see what's going on with that. Oh, wait just a darn minute. Love that Woolsey translation. This music here, too, I think it only appears, or not right here, but... There we go. This music right here is just epic, and it's hilarious that it comes on the heels of such a silly scene, based on such, like, where you get judged for eating the chicken man's lunch off of the table, and for telling Marley to hurry up with the candy buying. But yeah, it's just such epic, and actually, yeah, this music plays again later, I think, on the King's Trial. And that's like the only two places where you hear this music at all in the game. And it's just ridiculous that... And it's so cool. This is like one of my favorite tracks on the soundtrack. Do I need to talk about, like, what happens in this game? Has anyone, like, not seen this game before? So, like, if you be a goody two-shoes and do all of the good stuff at the fair, then you'll be found innocent. And the same thing basically happens. Except, oh yeah, I guess, so I was talking a bit about, like, sort of the idyllic presence and how everything is perfectly peaceful and there's no intra-group conflict with the humans in the present in Chrono Trigger. But this trial scene kind of puts the lie to that, especially if you get the not guilty verdict, because because that's when you get the sense that the Chancellor is sort of working against you. Because even if you get the not guilty verdict, then he still just lies his ass off and says, nah, just execute him anyways. Who cares? Just the paperwork got lost. This guy's set to be executed. Take my word for it. And that's sort of where you get the first sense that that something is wrong, something is rotten in the state of Denmark, as it were. That not everything is not all peace and roses and singing Kumbaya around the campfire in the present. But you don't really get that unless you get the not guilty verdict at the trial. Otherwise, you just, I've got my just desserts, a unanimous, not even, because the Chrono Trigger judicial standard is simple majority. But yeah, we got like a good old, like US of A, like constitutional conviction. By unanimous verdict, we kidnapped the princess and have to be executed in 3 days. So there's a couple ways you can do this scene too, where you can actually just wait out your 3-day execution. Actually, there's a couple ways to do this too. You can run in front of him and make for the exit, or you can Solid Snake it. And then he runs out. And if you just circle around in front of him, then you'll have to fight both of them. And I think there's a few different places in the prison where you have that option, where you can either fight a dude regularly or just shank him in the back. I just love this sequence. And again, it kind of goes to what I was talking about earlier, how JRPGs, in acknowledgement of their sort of shallowness of core gameplay, tried to vary things and mix things up with these little dungeon puzzles and mini games and whatnot. And you see that here, where we're Solid Snaking it around in the castle dungeon. Yeah, this is, and you don't see a ton. Don't get me wrong, you don't see a ton of that in Chrono Trigger, but you see enough of it. You see like the beginnings of it, and then you see like a lot more of this kind of thing in Final Fantasy VII, especially 8 as well to a lesser extent. But Final Fantasy VII, it seems like every dungeon you have like some sort of weird gimmick or mini game to go along with it, and a lot of ridiculous excuses to cram those things in as well. Where it's like, what, you got to give. In fact, back to back, like pretty much the whole. What was it? Was it Junon? Whatever, the city with the big cannon in Final Fantasy VII, where it's like first you got to give CPR to the little girl, so you do the CPR minigame, and then you've got to call the dolphin to climb the tower, so you do the dolphin whistle minigame, and then you go in and you participate in the parade, so you do the marching in the parade minigame, and then you do the call out military formation mini game, and it's just like packed full of, you got like a full RTS mini game right before that in Final Fantasy VII. That was when they went like almost overboard with the whole concept of variety and changing things up to actually, can we do this? Am I lined up correctly? Hell yeah, that's what I call solid snaking it through right there. We're gonna go fight him anyways though, because like I said, I want this to be kind of a thorough-going playthrough. So this is another thing where you... There we go. Gotta wait for him to peek his head out. I don't even remember what these guys do, like, as an attack. Like, I think they can't attack until they peek their heads out, and then I just always kill them before they do anything. Let's wait it out. Let's see what he does. What you got for me? Little... I can't see what his name is from here. Looks like they might not do anything. Oh, there we go. He's throwing rocks at me. Okay, so now we know. Okay. I think there's... Again, it's been a long time since I've played this game, but I played it enough back in the day to kind of have a pretty good sense of where to go and where to find stuff. And I feel like there's a load sword hidden somewhere in this dungeon if we explore thoroughly enough. So, I mean, like I said, this is going to be a thoroughgoing playthrough. We're going to go for the full 100%. I'm probably going to fight all the enemy groups just because... That's another thing I haven't talked about, the battle system, is the notion of not just random encounters, but like on-map encounters, and like scripted encounters, where it's like individual encounters that all have their own unique little initiation point, and a lot of them are kind of funny and clever, which is like a good way to kind of summarize all the neat stuff in this game in general. Just like a lot of funny and clever touches that, frankly, and yeah, I've talked about how you miss a lot of that kind of charm and yeah, a lot of that kind of charm and attention to detail really went away in the PS2 era of RPGs. But frankly, even for its time, even back in the day when that kind of thing was par for the course, I think Chrono Trigger stands head and shoulders above the competition. Like I said, as much as I'm talking up this game and the genre and the hero myth and all that bullshit, I still don't have too much of a taste for JRPGs. Like, I still dislike most of the RPGs that I played back in the day. I tried replaying Final Fantasy VII a few years back before I sold it, and I could not stand it. It's just too dull, even with the variety of the mini games and stuff, it's just not enough to alleviate the tedium and the shallowness of the core gameplay. At least for me, it's kind of on the edge, I guess. Oh yeah, this is our boy Fritz. We heard about him in town. I will definitely save him. I don't remember what we get for freeing him, but whatever. This is a pacifist run. Now that we've done the genocide run on the Millennial Fair, we're going to go pacifist for the rest of the game. Now I've completely forgotten about... I was going to go for dinner, wasn't I? We were going to do Yakra, and then I was going to go for pizza, assuming that my phone isn't lying to me here. But whatever. We'll do one more dungeon, and then go for pizza. So yeah, I've got work tomorrow, so I can't stream like all night like I'd kind of want to. But I don't know. We'll see how my energy levels kind of hold out. But ideally, I'd like to continue streaming like as much as possible. Like I work 4 days out of the week, but so I can stream basically all day on the other 3 days. But even then, I think I'd still like to stream on the evenings on the days that I work. We'll see how it goes, but oh yeah. That is kind of morbid when you think about it, actually. What happens to Fritz if you don't free him from the guillotine there? Do any humans actually die in Chrono Trigger other than Chrono himself? I feel like this is like a pretty PG type game here. Like this is kind of all ages. Nobody really... There isn't that much like gruesome murder or like mature themes or anything here. Which frankly is kind of typical of the genre, I think. That genre being harem comedy, which we discussed earlier. But although, mind you, a lot of that will be the Ted Woolsey translation as well, where you've got like, you know, the classic stuff that they do all the time. You've got Grog in 20 million BC, or 60 million, 6 million? I think it's 6 million BC, whatever. The Grog in the prehistoric age being transformed into, what is that? I think it's soup. Yeah, so they have a soup drinking competition. You know what? I've already fought those guys. I feel like I've had my fill of shield men on this playthrough. And I think that's about it, actually, as far as what do they call it? Bowdlerization, if I'm saying that word correctly. Balderization? I think it's Balderization. Basically, or frankly, Woolseyization would be a good enough term as well, where they basically take something that's like kind of questionably not kid-friendly for an American audience and sort of transforming it from the original Japanese. Like, and you see that a lot, where it's like beer transformed into coffee or something like that. Like, there it is. I knew that there was going to be a load sword. Okay, so we've got a load sword. Yippee. In fact, I've pointed that out on my YouTube channel before. There was the Rockin' Cats playthrough where they transformed a beer bottle into a soda bottle, if I remember that correctly. Rockin' Cats, that's going to be one for the stream as well. I haven't played that game since my YouTube Let's Play of that. Oh, such a good game. I'm almost tempted. Like, I've never been into the speedrunning thing. Like, there's the occasional speedrun stream. I prefer speedrunning streams to be, like, more social than, like, a lot of speedrun streams you see is just, like, completely dead. It's, like, completely silent, no commentary. It's just all about getting the best run possible. And that's, like, the majority of the speedrun community, I find. Like, even the guys who I find do good commentary at, like, the Games Done Quick events, I find will have really, in my opinion, really boring Twitch streams. There's the occasional exception, but in general, I'm not a huge fan of the speedrun streams. And frankly, the whole speedrun approach to video games, I don't know, I'm more of a pan... That wasn't deliberate, but I mean pan in the sense of everything. An omni-gamer, if you will. I would rather play like 1,000 different games than devote 1,000 hours into getting the perfect speed run of a particular game. And again, that's back to my personality metrics. I don't have the levels of conscientiousness required to really be a truly good speedrunner. Nevertheless, I've thought about getting into speedrunning just for the purpose of promoting some of my favorite games, and not even to be at like Games Done Quick myself, but just to like introduce the game to the speedrunning community. And Rockin' Cats is the biggest one for that. Where I love the idea of if I could get into Rockin' Cats and do Rockin' Cats speedruns and be like the world champion at speedrunning Rockin' Cats, just for the sake of getting Rockin' Cats at AGDQ, because I think that would be a phenomenal speedrun game that absolutely deserves a spot at the GDQ events, or I did that wrong. We need to... Okay, so he's resistant to our elemental attacks, so we need to... Or I think slash... That is true, Saturn. I think that... And yeah, don't get me wrong, I do understand how it is. Like, a lot of... I think a lot of the reason why I think that the 2D platformer is kind of what I gravitate towards for my streams is because it doesn't require a lot of thought. I can very easily... Yeah, as I thought. Man, I'm just fucking everything up here. And this is a good demonstration of that. In fact, you can really turn your brain off and, like, you can play a 2D platformer and commentate and read chat and do whatever else at the same time, because it's very much like a lizard brain, muscle memory type thing. Whereas something more thoughtful, like a strategy game or an RPG or something that requires reading, takes a bit more effort. And also speedrunning and actually putting conscious effort into doing a platform game really, really well. And speedrunning a game also takes a lot of conscious effort. So I totally understand why speedrunners don't necessarily have the best commentary on a lot of their streams, because that's not the focus of what they're about. They're more about optimizing the game and finding the strats and getting the perfect run and all of that kind of thing. And I can respect that. It's just not for me. That's not the kind of thing that I'm into. I'd rather play a billion different games. Yeah, sure. Theoretically, I would rather play a billion different games than be the world champion at any particular game. Good grief. I really wish they'd rather have given you Marle rather than Lucca for this fight, just because her healing would be really, really effective here, because Lucca's kind of useless because her fire attacks don't do anything, because this thing resists fire. Does it? I'm gonna put that notion to the test. We can hit the whole thing with fire anyways. I think it's just the head is resistant to fire and lightning. Okay, so that's actually decent. She can actually help us speed things up a little bit. But yeah, if you ever shoot the thing, then it's pretty useless. Yeah, 16 damage versus... Oi, and the counterattack, so yeah, no more of that. Thank you very much. Oh, goodness. Look at that. Chrono is like twice as fast as Lucca right here. In fact, yeah, I'm not even gonna have her heal herself. She's just gonna be a heal bot right now. And yeah, I feel like Marle would fulfill that role much more nicely here. Yeah, we're just gonna heal Chrono up. I don't think this thing can even deal 18 damage in one hit without his counterattack anyways. We should be done right about now. There we go. This is so cool. I love how they have him throw down the finishing move right here. And of course, they're sure to have this little scene here in the intro as well. I didn't talk about this when we were playing the introductory cutscene. I was talking about technical bullshit and YouTube bullshit. But the opening demo for this game, where they just show they play the theme song and show a bunch of different scenes from the game, is just phenomenal. It's like the best opening demo from any video game ever. If you were to put that on TV and show that as like an ad for Chrono Trigger. Did they have ads for Chrono Trigger back in the day? I remember ads for other Super Nintendo games. I'm losing my voice now, so I am gonna have to take a short break, probably for supper after this. But yeah, I saw ads for Super Nintendo games, but I think they were all Nintendo games. Like, I saw ads for Legend of Zelda, because there was the tagline too. Now you're playing with power, super power, and I remember that from back in the day. But that was it. I don't remember seeing any non-Nintendo games, like non-Nintendo published games, for Super Nintendo advertised on TV back in the day, which is a bit of a shame because. Yeah, I think you could make a really good ad for something like Chrono Trigger. Just like play that opening video, and it's like the coolest thing ever. And you see more of that in the PlayStation era as well, where they use like FMV And, there was the famous Final Fantasy commercial where they show, like, all of the CG in the game to sell that, and it sold, like, a gajillion copies as a result. I think it was, like, the best-selling game of all time for, like, many, many years afterwards. And that was all the result of, like, the new 3D FMV technology and all of that. And it's, to be sure, it's a huge step up from this type of thing. I guess as a sprite art connoisseur of sorts, I'm a little bit biased in favor of this game's opening cutscene and just sort of the style of graphics and animation that this game has. So maybe that type of commercial wouldn't appeal to a mass audience back in the day. Maybe we had to wait for PlayStation FMV and that kind of thing to speaking of sprite parsing right now, is it just me or does Chrono have like his hand on his chin like this? Or has he just got like a scarf or something? It looks to me like he's got his arms folded and he's like looking ponderously at that gate over there. Like this or something like that. Maybe that's why he's so silent all the time. He's a very, very thoughtful type of person. So like I was saying earlier, how you can convey a lot of characterization in just the actions that a hero takes, and his sprite animation as well. You don't have to have a billion lines of dialogue and a voice actor and all of that to establish a proper, likable hero. And again, going back to the whole Joseph Campbell nonsense, it's really, really just interesting to me how little needs to be in place to establish that kind of effective hero archetype in an RPG. I think that's a good place to leave it for now. I'm going to take a little bit of an extended break after this, I think. Probably take a supper break. So yeah, we'll be back in... Okay, we'll finish up this scene, and then we'll be back in, like, I'm going to say, like, 15, 20 minutes, thereabouts. I'll be available to chat in chat if anyone wants to chat. But, yeah, after this scene... This is where the seriousness kind of picks up. We've just been kind of fun, time-traveling, romping adventures until now. But here's where shit gets real after this point. So this is a good break point for the stream right now. So we're gonna put up the little alert message that says supper break back in, or we'll go generous on this and say about 20 minutes, and we'll stick that up there. And yeah, since apparently the game is going to just freeze in place while I don't have the window focused, we'll put on some background music to entertain us all, because I'll be listening to this too while I eat my supper. There we go. Hey, we got some more Xenogears. That's an interesting one that I tried to revisit it once about a year ago, and it did not do it for me, but there was a lot of interesting stuff in there that might be worth revisiting on a stream at some point. But that's another story for another day. Yeah, as it says, yeah, back in 20 minutes.